Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
Study Louisa. With an education, you can't go anywhere, and I'll help you in any way I can, said Brianna to her daughter while she was studying at school. Louisa grew up an obedient, kind, hardworking girl. She never knew her father. She was raised by her mother and grandmother. Brianna tried hard to make sure that her daughter did not need anything and did not feel inferior to her friends. She worked all day long and only spent time with her daughter on the rare weekends she had. One day, when Louise was in 8th grade, she overheard a conversation between her mother and grandmother. How could he do that? Brianna almost cried. I trusted him, and he... What am I supposed to do now? What's the use of crying after the time? Answered Victoria. It's God's will. If it happened, then so be it. I'd like to raise Louise. Her mother wailed. And then there's this. The woman kept interrupting her phrases, so the girl could not understand what her grandmother and mother were saying. Suddenly, Brianna asked, Will you stay a couple of days with Louise while I'm in the hospital? Don't you dare, I forbid you. Victoria was indignant. These are not toys. You should have thought about it before. Now don't anger God. We'll raise it. We raised Louise and we'll raise another child. Louise dropped the textbook she was holding in her hands in surprise. Her mother came running at the sound. What's wrong? How long have you been standing there? She asked. Mom, are you going to have a baby? Ignoring her mother's question, the girl asked. No, you misunderstood everything. The woman began to twist. I need to go away for a while, and I asked Grandma to look after you. Why are you lying to me? The daughter asked. I clearly heard Grandma say that we would raise another child. Her daughter's words confused her. She flapped her eyelashes and remained silent. Victoria still did not interfere in their conversation, but seeing her daughter's confusion, she said, Louise, you are an adult and have a right to know. It just so happens that you will soon have a little sister or brother. Mom, Brianna tried to stop her. Louisa, don't listen to her. Grandma's got it all wrong. Louise hugged her mother and whispered, I've dreamed so much about having a sister. I pray for it every night, and God has heard my prayers. I will help you with everything, but don't take away my dream. Together we can do it. Brianna was moved by her daughter's words. She pressed the girl against her and cried. Seeing this picture, Victoria exhaled with relief and said, Well, thank God, I've got it all figured out. At the due date, Brianna gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl and named her Martha. Louise, as promised, never left her sister's side. And when she was at school, Victoria took care of the baby girl. Brianna had to leave maternity leave after 3 months to keep her job. Martha's father never showed up at their house or showed any interest in their daughter, so the baby's birth certificate, like Louisa's, had a dash on it. Victoria loved her granddaughters. She was very worried about them and feared that they would repeat their mother's fate. She often stroked their heads and sighed, saying, My orphans. Louise did not understand why her grandmother called them that, because they had a mother and grandmother who loved them. But Victoria's words became prophetic. When Louise was finishing 11th grade, Victoria suddenly fell ill. The doctors couldn't make an accurate diagnosis, so they treated one thing or another. But the medicines didn't help. Every day she was getting worse and worse. Just recently, a woman full of strength was dying in front of her family. On the day when Louisa received her high school diploma, Victoria passed away. Louise wanted to go to work to help her mother raise her younger sister, but Brianna insisted that the girl continue to study. Louise entered the institute without much difficulty. Now she had less time for her sister, but she still helped her mother whenever possible. Martha grew up a bright, inquisitive, and very mobile girl. She was always happy when her sister returned from the institute and followed her around all evening. She could sit next to Olga for hours and watch her comprehend the sciences. When Martha was 5 years old and Louise was in her 3rd year at the institute, Brianna suddenly fell ill. Thinking that it was just a cold, the woman did not pay attention to it and continued to go to work. But every day she got worse and worse. When she got to the hospital, it was too late. She was diagnosed with a terrible disease that was incurable. Brianna burned out like a candle in 6 months. After burying her mother, Louise, who had just entered her 4th year of college, was left with a little sister in her arms. From the inheritance, they had only a 2-room apartment on the outskirts of the city in which they lived. Having learned about the situation in the family, the guardianship and custody authorities immediately came to visit. Despite her older sister's resistance, Marta was taken to the orphanage with the words, "You are not able to support the child. You have no permanent income except for a scholarship, but that is not enough. Get a job and then come to us." For several days, Louise went door to door looking for work, and luck smiled on her. She found a job as a housekeeper in a wealthy house. The owner, a woman in her 50s, was looking for a housekeeper, but she needed references. After talking to Louise and finding out all the circumstances that had brought her to her, she took a liking to the girl and took her on probation. "If you're right for me, I won't hurt your salary and I'll help you get your sister back," Donna promised. Louise tried hard to please her employer, and after a few weeks she managed to get Martha out of the orphanage. She was happy, even though it was not easy for her now. Early in the morning, Louise took her sister to daycare and drove to the other side of the city, where she had to take care of the housework. Good thing, even in the lifetime of her mother and grandmother, the girl learned to manage the household. From work, she ran to the institute. In the evening, Louise would go to the kindergarten to pick up Marta, and the sisters would return home together. Marta, though she was still very young, often noticed the tiredness on her sister's face. At such times, she would sit down beside her, put her arm around her, and like an adult say, "It's hard for you, Louisa, but don't be sad. I'll grow up soon and I'll help you with everything. The main thing is that we're together, just don't leave me." Louise hugged Marta motherly and replied with a smile, "We will definitely manage everything." Louise was pleased that she had found a job and was able to bring her sister home. Over time, she became attached to her employer. The relationship between the owner and the housekeeper was warm, even friendly. The girl was surprised by only one thing. Why does a nice in every way, kind in every way, smart, intelligent, wealthy woman lives alone? She did not dare to ask directly, and Donna did not tell anything about herself. One day, while cleaning, Louise came across a photo album and couldn't resist her curiosity. One page after another, she looked at the pictures of young Donna. Some of them showed her posing alone, some had her friends by her side. Only one picture showed Donna with a handsome young man. It looked very happy. Engrossed in the photo, Louisa did not notice how the landlady entered the room. When she saw the photo album in her hands, she said, "All my memories are in it. Friends, colleagues, just acquaintances. And who is this?" Louise asked cautiously, pointing to the picture of a young man. "You're both so happy here." Donna sat down next to her, took the photo in her hands, looked at the smiling faces for a few minutes in silence, as if remembering the events in which it was taken, and then spoke. "You're right. We are very happy here indeed," she said. "This is Jack, my fiancé. We are 30 years old in this photo. We loved each other. I thought we're going to get married, making plans for the future. And then it was over in an instant." Donna was silent. Louisa felt that it was difficult for her mistress to remember the events of distant years and even more difficult to talk about them. The girl put her arm around Donna and rested her head on her shoulder. The woman smiled, though there was a deep sadness in her eyes. "Is he dead?" Louise tried to pull her mistress out of her memories. "Who?" Donna woke up. "Jack?" "No, he's fine, I guess." After a little more silence, the woman pulled herself together and continued. "A week before the wedding, I found out he was seeing someone else." "What do you mean?" Louise was surprised. "Why get married if you love someone else?" Donna smiled and looked at the housekeeper with a slight squint of her eyes. "You're still young. You don't understand a lot of things. You trust people, and they often take advantage of our kindness and gullibility. By my 30s, I had already achieved a lot in life. I had my own business, which developed and brought a good income. I lived in a spacious apartment and planned to buy a house. I could already afford to go on vacation twice a year. Sergei liked all this. You bet." The girl couldn't help her emotions. "He was happy to go on vacation with me," Donna continued, not paying attention to the exclamation of the housekeeper. "He made plans for our future together every day. He already had a design in his head for the house we were to live in, us and our children. He dreamed of me having a child with him, or better yet, 2 or 3. He had it all figured out. By his own admission, he wanted to marry me, put me on maternity leave, and take my place in my business. He gradually transferred the money into his accounts and then, would fly away to his dove, who for the sake of enrichment was willing to endure all this, waiting for him. What a horror. Louise was genuinely amazed. And where did you meet him? 3 years before the events I described, he came to work at my company. His good education and experience spoke in his favor. Jack was a quick learner, quick to grasp things. His determination, diligence, and persistence were amazing. At first, he caught my attention as an employee. There aren't many like him. Gradually, our communication turned into a friendly one, and 2 years later, he made me an offer. I knew him only from a positive side, so I immediately agreed. Before him, I had many admirers, but in all of them, I found some flaw. Jack seemed perfect to me. It's true what they say. Love is blind. When you found out about the affair, did you break up with him? Yes, I kicked him out the same day. After Sergei, no one could win your heart, Louise asked. I was already pregnant when I broke up with him, Donna admitted. I found out that day and rushed home to make my fiancé happy. But the surprise didn't work. He brought his mistress to my apartment. The woman was still surprised by her fiancé's insolence. A banal story. But it always seems to happen only in the movies or somewhere far away. But not to you. Donna summed up her story. And the baby? Louise asked. Was it born? Yes, of course it was. I had a healthy, beautiful boy at the due date, and I named him Austin. Where is he now? He's on an internship in America. He should be back soon. I admire you, Donna. Louise said with emotion. You're so strong. You made your own business. You raised your son alone, gave him a good education. Yes, I did everything for him, the woman confirmed. I felt guilty that I had deprived him of communication with his father, so I tried to fill the gap in every way I could. If clothes, shoes, then the best branded, vacation only abroad, education European. In short, I worked day and night to provide my boy with the best. He must love you very much and appreciate everything you do for him. Louisa's question remained unanswered. Donna abruptly changed the subject, remembering that she had a business appointment. Louise and her sister spent the whole weekend at Donna's house. At her mistress' request, she cleaned the rooms several times, especially the one for the young master. Finally, exhausted, the housekeeper said, Donna, the whole house is already shining. Don't you think you've done enough cleaning? After a second look in all the most secret corners, she agreed. All right, it looks clean, she said, and then added, Austin doesn't like the house to be dusty or cluttered. Early the next week, the mother was looking forward to her son's arrival. You don't have to come tomorrow, she told Louise the day before. Austin and I will need some alone time. It's been so long since we've seen each other. The housekeeper nodded and said goodbye. The next day after school, Louise hurried to the daycare center to pick up her sister early. The weather was overcast. It had been raining since the morning. In the afternoon, the rain stopped, but the humidity and strong wind were pervasive. Louise was standing at the bus stop waiting for the bus when a car stopped nearby. A young man got out of the car and, ignoring the people around him, headed toward the flower store behind the bus stop. Louise looked at the stranger at the door and suddenly caught herself thinking, lucky the girl he's going to marry will be lucky. Without realizing what it was about him that attracted her attention, she noted his confident gait, his noble bearing, his attractive appearance, and the trail of expensive cologne that followed him drove her crazy. The young man came out of the store with a gorgeous bouquet of flowers. The thought flashed through Louise's mind again. Who is the lucky girl to whom these flowers are intended? The stranger got into the car and drove off briskly. Louise, who was standing next to him, was wet and dirty from the splashing from the wheels. The car sped away, and the girl stood there, almost crying, trying to clean herself up. The first pleasant impression, which at first left a young man, was spoiled. The next morning, Louise came to work. To her surprise, Donna was in no hurry to go anywhere. She was sitting on the living room couch drinking coffee, the aroma of which wafted throughout the house. Saying hello to her hostess, the girl asked in surprise, "Are you alone? And where is your son?" "He is still asleep," answered the woman and took a sip of the fragrant drink. You don't have to go up to the second floor today. Wipe the dust in the living room and wash the dishes left over from last night's dinner." Louise went to the dining room. She was surprised to see on the table the same bouquet of flowers that had been brought from the store by the stranger who had doused her from the puddle the day before. While the housekeeper washed the dishes, the young master went down to the living room. Turning off the water, Louise found herself an unwilling witness to part of the conversation between mother and son. "This is my life," said the young man, "and it is for me to decide how and with whom to spend it. I think I have the right to express my opinion on this," came Donna's voice. "It seems to you," answered the son and went to the dining room. When he crossed the threshold, the young man stood up in surprise. It was the stranger with the bouquet. "And who are you?" he asked, not very kindly. "Louise," she introduced herself. "I am the housekeeper." "Hey, I see," he said with what she thought was a twinge of squeamishness, and went into the refrigerator. "Can you make an omelet?" "I do, only it's not." Louise wanted to say that cooking was not her job. She preferred to cook her own food. But the young man did not want to hear her out. Apparently, it was not in his habits. "Then make it quick," he said. "I don't have much time." Louise didn't want to spoil her relationship with the landlady's son, so she took out a frying pan and began to fry an omelet. She often made this dish for breakfast in the mornings, so it was as good as a professional cook. It's been a long time since I've had an omelet like that," said Austin. "You surprised me." "Thank you." Louise realized that she was pleased with Austin's praise. At that moment, Donna entered the dining room. Now she was in full dress, as always. "I see you two have met," she said. "Thank you, Louise, for breakfast. You can be free. But don't forget to dust the living room." After finishing her work, the girl walked along the road towards the institute and replayed in her head the events of the last 2 days. Something was wrong with Donna and Austin's relationship. For all his external attractiveness, there was something repulsive in the young man's behavior. On the one hand, that gorgeous bouquet for his mother, and at the same time, the rude conversation with her in the morning. Louise remembered with what impatience Donna waited for her son, and now they behaved as if they were strangers to each other. She couldn't stop asking herself, why did Austin have such an attitude toward the closest person to her? What could she have done to displease him? And what were they arguing about in the living room? A familiar voice interrupted her thought process. Louise turned her head and saw Austin sitting behind the wheel of the very car that had doused her the day before. He was smiling with his mouth full of white teeth like a Hollywood actor. While Louise was gathering her thoughts, the young man repeated his question. "How far are you going? I can give you a ride." "No, thank you," she replied. "I'm almost there." "Well, as you wish," Austin said with a shrug of his shoulders and drove off sharply. One day, Louise came in when Donna was no longer home. After cleaning up, the girl was about to leave, but Austin stopped her. "Are you leaving already?" he asked. "I was going to ask you to clean my room." Louise took a vacuum cleaner, a rag, a bucket of water, and went up to the second floor. All the time she was skillfully operating the vacuum cleaner, Austin stood in the doorway and watched the cleaning. At one point, Louise felt out of place. "Is something wrong?" she asked. No, it's great. I love watching other people work." "Have you tried getting a job?" Austin didn't like Louise's question. He wrinkled his nose and concluded, "You're impertinent," and then added, clearly wanting to put her in her place. "But what can you take from a housekeeper? You've hardly been taught manners." "I see you didn't go to etiquette school either," Louise suggested in the same tone. "If you'll allow me, I'll take over." "Of course, the money has to be paid," Austin said and left the room. Having finished cleaning, Louise went downstairs. Austin was lying on the sofa in the living room. When he saw the housekeeper, he stood up and looked at her from head to toe and asked, "Is it over already? So soon? Check it out. If there's anything wrong, I'll fix it." With a hum, the young man went upstairs. After a minute, he looked out of his room and said, "That'll do for the first time." "Thank you, and that's it," Louisa replied and headed for the exit. "Why did your mother take you?" he said to her. "You're always in a hurry. What if I need a housekeeper tonight?" "Donna is quite satisfied with my candidacy." The girl was not confused. "You should hire someone else. You're too talkative," the young man said irritably. "This is no way for a servant to behave." and you find yourself a deaf mute. She will not hear your rudeness and will not cross you. Louisa replied and disappeared behind the door. Austin shook his head unhappily and went back to his room. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. Usually girls looked him in the mouth, trying to please the enviable beau. But now some housekeeper had taken the liberty of speaking to him disrespectfully. It really hurt the young man. And at the same time, Austin was impressed by Louisa's boldness and sharp wit. The next day, the young master got up early. Louise caught him in the kitchen as he rummaged in the refrigerator. Donna was finishing her coffee and giving her son advice on what to eat for breakfast. "Maybe our housekeeper could make me something," Austin suggested, looking at Louisa. The girl looked at him, then at her hostess. Catching her questioning look, Donna said, "Louisa, if it's not too much trouble for you, feed my hungry son. At the end of the month, I'll recalculate your paycheck." The housekeeper quickly threw on an apron and started preparing breakfast. Meanwhile, the housekeeper said goodbye to the household and left for work. While Austin devoured Ova's cheesecakes, she began to clean up. Wiping the dust in the office, the girl felt a stare. Turning around, she saw Austin standing on the doorstep, watching her every move. "Did you need something?" she asked. "I wanted to thank you for the cheesecakes," he said. "I'm glad you liked them." The girl wanted to continue her work, but she noticed that Austin was not leaving. "Anything else?" she asked. "You're feeding me breakfast," the young man replied. "Let me take you to lunch." "Thanks, but I eat lunch at the Institute in the cafeteria." "I see. Where do you get the money for restaurants?" "But don't worry. If I invite you, I pay." "You're an amazing man," she said, apparently wanting to thank you. "You managed to offend. I do not need your restaurants. I trust the canteen at the Institute more." "Come on, don't pout." Austin tried to reconcile. "I don't understand your stubbornness either. You're invited to a restaurant, and you refuse." "Aren't you used to rejection?" Louise suggested. "Usually girls jump to the ceiling when I ask them to spend time with me," Austin admitted. "I'd had enough of your company here," she retorted, "and your ceilings are high. I can't jump, so I'm not going to try." "Okay, we don't have time for lunch, so why don't we have dinner tonight? If you don't want to go to a restaurant, let's go to a cafe or a canteen," he said and grinned. "Maybe I'll like it there too." "I don't think so," Louisa replied. "Dine with your sportswoman where you're used to. I'll make do with homemade cutlets." "Well, as you like," said Austin, not hiding his displeasure. "But if you change your mind, let me know. My offer still stands." "Are you in a hurry again?" Austin asked when Louise was about to leave. "Should my room be cleaned?" "You were asleep. I didn't want to wake you," she replied. "I have to go to the Institute. If you can't wait until tomorrow to clean, I can come back after school. Do me a favor." After class, Louisa went to work. Donna wasn't home yet, but Austin welcomed her with open arms. "I thought you weren't coming." Ignoring her young master's nagging, Louise changed into her work clothes and headed upstairs. What was her surprise when she entered Austin's room? Orderly and clean, everything was in its proper place. The surprised housekeeper turned to the young man who had followed her and asked, "Did you clean it yourself? Do you think I can't even tidy my own room?" He answered her question with a question. "I didn't say that," Louise remarked. "Then why did you have to invite me? It's a good thing the Institute is within walking distance of your house. Otherwise, you wouldn't be lured to dinner," Austin explained. "What dinner?" she asked, not hiding her annoyance. "I have to go to kindergarten. My child is waiting for me, and I'm going to have dinner here." While Austin was digesting what the housekeeper had said, Louise went downstairs, changed her clothes, and headed out. She was stopped at the door by the young master. "So you have a child? And you're breaking like a girl," he said and grabbed her arm and pulled her to him. Louise didn't have time to realize what was happening when Austin pressed her against the wall and started kissing her. The girl tried to resist, but the forces were unequal. With one hand, the guy held her arms, and the other was already getting under her skirt. "Let me go," Louise demanded. "I'll tell Donna everything." "And I'll tell her that you attacked me," Austin replied with a sneer in his voice. "Who is she going to believe? Her son or some cleaning lady?" "Let me go," she said, trying to get away. "Don't you have enough groupies? What do you need me for?" The girl's fierce resistance made the young man even more eager. His kisses became more and more demanding, and his hands roamed all over her body. In one motion, Austin pulled Louise down onto the couch and began to undo the buttons of her blouse. "There are a lot of admirers, but they get boring," he admitted in a burst of passion. "They're just a whistle away. And you're not like that." "Then let me go," Louisa begged. "I don't want to be like this." Austin had no time to say anything when his mother's voice came from behind him. "What's going on here?" she asked menacingly. Austin jumped up from the sofa like a scalded man and said, smoothing his hair and clothes with his hands, "I didn't hear you come in." "I noticed," Donna parried. "So what's going on here?" Louise rose to follow Austin. Burning with shame, she hid her eyes and tried to tidy her clothes. "Excuse me, Donna," the housekeeper said in a low voice. She wanted to explain the situation, but Austin interrupted her. "Mom, we're adults to answer to you," he said. "It seemed to me that Louise did not enjoy your caresses." "You imagined it," replied the young man. "No, I didn't." Louisa interrupted him. "I'm sorry, Donna, but I'm not going to work in your house anymore. I took a job as a housekeeper. It's not my job to please your son." "You have nothing to apologize to me for," said the landlady. "I'm the one who needs to apologize to you. Go home. We'll talk tomorrow." Louise grabbed her bag and quickly ran out of the house. She wanted to forget this nightmare as quickly as possible, but the scent of Austin's expensive cologne followed her all the way home. It wasn't until she took a shower that she was able to get rid of the intrusive scent. The next morning, Donna called Louise herself and asked her to come to her house. Austin wouldn't be there, she warned, "but we need to talk." Half an hour later, Louise was already at Donna's house. "Don't be angry with my son," she asked. "He thinks money can buy everything and everyone. It's probably my fault. Like any loving mother, I always wanted the best for him, so I worked 20 hours a day." Austin was left to his own devices. When he was little, he had a nanny, but when he grew up and became independent, that's when the problems started. As is often the case when parents are very busy, the teenager got involved with a bad company, fell in love with the girl who at that time was already on the record in the police. The boy, who for 7 years of schooling had shown great promise, seemed to be replaced. He became rude, left home, skipped lessons at school. Persuasion and pleas didn't work. In order to pull him out of this company, I had to change my place of residence and the school my son attended. Austin was very worried about parting with this girl, blamed me for all the deadly sins. For a few years, our relationship was very strained, but gradually my son got his head on straight. He graduated from school with a silver medal and entered the institute. Everything seemed to be back to normal, but the spoiled relationship with my son never fully recovered. In his eyes, I remained forever busy mom, who first deprived him of his father, and then his favorite girl. But it's been so long. Louise couldn't contain her emotions. "Your Austin is a grown man." "He's only grown up," Donna replied, "but in his heart, he's still a hurt little child who takes revenge for his wrongs whenever he gets the chance." "But you said he was on an internship," Louise recalled. Yes, Austin had graduated with honors and had been offered a position with a well-known company, but he had to do an internship first. I hoped that being away from me would change him, and I thought it would, but yesterday I caught you. "It wasn't my fault," Louise said. "I was about to leave, but..." "I believe you," the landlady interrupted her. "You don't have to justify yourself to me. I thought my son liked you, and I hoped that you and he could have a relationship. But I guess I was wrong again." "I don't think I'm the right girl for him," Louise said. "We have different attitudes to life and people." "Maybe," agreed Donna, "but I still want to ask you not to leave my house. I've grown attached to you, and it's hard to find decent, honest people like you these days." After a short pause, Louise shook her head and said, "No, Donna, I'm sorry, but I don't want to see your son again." "I thought so," the woman admitted, and, taking an envelope with a few bills from her dresser drawer, handed it to the housekeeper. "This is your paycheck. Thank you for your work, but you should think about it. Maybe you'll change your mind." A few days passed after Louise was fired from Donna's house. During the time she'd been working, she'd been able to put aside some money, which now came in handy. The allowance from the state was also a good help. Not to say that the sisters did not need anything, but they were not poor either. Louisa's main concern was that the guardianship authorities would not come to check on them. "Louise, will they take me back to the orphanage?" Marta asked her sister every now and then. "No, They won't, Louisa answered. I'll find another job soon. But in a pinch, I'll go to Donna. She promised to help. It's a shame you don't work for Aunt Donna anymore. I liked her, Martha confided to her sister on the walk. I like her too, agreed Louise. But unfortunately, we can't always do what we want to do. Why don't we visit her? Martha suggested it. She won't kick us out, will she? She won't, confirmed her big sister. But let's do it some other time. Why some other time? Suddenly, a man's voice came from behind the sisters sitting on the bench. My man will be glad to see you. The girls turned around. Austin was standing behind them with a bouquet in his hands. Hearing the familiar voice, Louise flinched. All these days she had been trying to forget about the incident, and she certainly hadn't expected to see him in the yard of her own house. Who are you? Martha inquired. The young man walked around the bench and squatted down in front of the girl, extended his hand to her and introduced himself. Uncle Austin, what's your name? Martha, she answered cheerfully and pointing to the flowers asked, And who are these for? Your mom, the man said and handed the bouquet to Louise. My mom is dead, and Louise is my sister, the girl explained. Martha's words confused Austin. I'm sorry. He turned to Martha. I didn't know. What are you doing here? Louise asked, making it clear that she was not happy to see him. I came to apologize for my behavior. I don't know what came over me. Take these flowers as a token of reconciliation. I forgive you, but I won't take the flowers, Louisa replied and went home. Louisa, I was going to ask you to come back to work. No, I promised to behave. I'm not sure you know anything about decorum. Everybody can make mistakes, Austin said in his defense, but you have to be able to forgive. I said I forgave you, the girl reminded him, but I'm not going to work for you anymore. What can I do to make you change your mind? Why such persistence? I'm sure there will be a lot of people willing to take my place. By the way, maybe they'll be more cooperative. Austin, who was not accustomed to long persuasion, could hardly contain his irritation. I wouldn't have insisted if it hadn't been for my mother, he admitted. She's been giving me a hard time. How did you win her over? Louise is the best. Martha stood up for her sister. The young man looked at the girl and then back at the former housekeeper. Think it over, he said. We won't hurt your wages. Putting the bouquet on the bench, Austin walked quickly to the car. In a minute, he was already behind the house. Martha looked at him and said, What a nasty uncle. Did you leave Aunt Donna because of him? Yes, she admitted. I didn't like him at first either. It's a shame you don't work there anymore, Martha said on the way home. The sisters never returned to the subject again, but it didn't take Austin long. A couple of days later, he met Louise after school. Are you following me? She asked irritably. Finally, you stopped yelling at me, the young man remarked. I think we're even closer now. Why did you come here? Louise repeated the question. I wanted to see if you had changed your mind. No. That's a pity. Mammon's having a hard time. Austin paused, as if waiting for a clarifying question, but when he didn't, he continued. I was hoping your return would get her back on her feet quickly. What does that mean? Louise didn't understand. Didn't I say? Mammon stumbled on the porch and fell and broke her leg. Now she's sitting at home, telling me every minute how bad I am. Why didn't you tell me this before? The girl got worried. Are you driving? We're in the car, Austin replied with a smirk. Will you even get in my car? If you don't mind, Louise said and followed him. Austin turned the key in the ignition and pressed the gas pedal. The car squealed and sped forward like a rocket. Louise's breath caught in her throat. Don't be afraid. I'll take you home like an airplane, the driver promised. The main thing is not to take off early, she replied, holding tightly to the handle. And you with humor, noted the young man and grinned. Soon the car pulled up outside Donna's house. Austin got out of the car and called out to his mother, but no one answered. Stepping over the threshold of the house, he shouted, My man, look who I brought you. Louise appeared at the door. She immediately saw the owner sitting on the sofa in the living room with a plastered leg. Donna was overjoyed to see her guest. What a surprise, she exclaimed. Unexpected, but very pleasant. Have you changed your mind and decided to come back? Come in. Well, why are you standing on the doorstep like a stranger? Donna was genuinely happy to see Louisa. She didn't know where to sit her or what to serve her. "Well, you two talk," Austin said, going upstairs. "When you go home," he said to Louise, "call me. I'll drive you." "Thank you," she replied, "but I know the way. I'll try myself." "As you wish." The landlady and the former housekeeper sat over a cup of tea and talked like good old friends. Donna was interested in the girl's studies, her plans for the future, asked about her younger sister, and did not fail to complain about the accident that had happened to her 2 days ago. But most of the time the woman talked about her son. "I think Austin has begun to grow up," she admitted. "He is changing in front of my eyes. He stopped being rude, became more restrained and patient, helps me around the house. And most importantly, he went to work. It's about time he got his head on straight." "Yes," Donna agreed, "but I think you can take credit for that." "Me?" Louise was surprised. "You're exaggerating. I haven't worked for you for half a month. It was after you left that I started to notice a change in my son. Maybe he's fallen in love with you." "Donna, don't make this up. I'm just a servant for your son, a cleaning lady. Men like him don't even look at men like me. And frankly, I'm not crazy about Austin." "You should look at him, though," Mom said. "He's not bad at heart. Austin was great when he was a kid. If it hadn't been for his exposure to bad company." "I understand," Louise interrupted her. "Like a loving mother, you idealize your child. But Austin's grown up now, and he has to take responsibility for his actions." "You're right, Louise. You're absolutely right. But everyone can make mistakes. Give him a chance. I see the way he looks at you. You're not like the rest of his girlfriends, mercantile, glossy, capricious dolls who are used to having fun and doing nothing. You're real. You're just like me when I was young. That's probably why I'm so attached to you." "I am flattered to hear you say that," Louisa replied. "But don't try to set me up with your son. I am not sure that we both need it." The conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Austin. Glancing at the clock on the wall, he asked the guest, "Aren't you going to be late for kindergarten?" Louise jumped up like a scalded woman. "Oh, I've forgotten all about the time," she confessed. "Donna, get well. I'll visit you again, with your permission. Or maybe you can come back to us at least for a while," the landlady asked, "until I get better." Louise was taken by surprise by her landlady's request. She didn't want to see Austin every day, but she couldn't say no to someone in need. "Okay, I'll go to work tomorrow," she promised and headed for the exit. "Can I give you a ride after all?" Austin asked. "I'm going your way. I won't bother you," he promised and grinned. "Come on, Louise." Donna joined in. "You'll have a long ride on public transportation, and the daycare center will be closed by then." "All right," she said, and followed Austin. Almost the whole way, the young people drove in silence. Stopping near the garden, Austin suddenly asked, "I do not understand why you have taken on all this trouble. You yourself are not yet firmly on your feet, and then there is your sister. Where am I supposed to put her?" Louise asked. "Well, there are boarding schools, orphanages," he began to enumerate. "I have no doubt that if you were in my place, you would have done the same thing. I love my sister. But you probably don't understand that." She was about to get out of the car, but Austin stopped her. "Why are you making a monster of me? I thought I already apologized for my behavior. I just wanted to say that it's hard to carry a baby on your own, especially in your situation." "Yes," Louise agreed. "It's a difficult position to be in. But Martha's my sister, and I'm the only one she's got. She has no one else to rely on. I will never abandon or betray her." "That is commendable," said Austin with his usual grin. "You decided to put your youth on her, and then she'll grow up and won't thank you for it. You shouldn't judge people by themselves. Not everyone grows up ungrateful," Louise retorted. "I don't do it for thanks. Perhaps I need it more than she does. But you don't understand that." Louise got out of the car and headed for the kindergarten. Austin stared after her until she disappeared around the corner. The housekeeper's words had hurt his ego. He hated to hear that he was an ungrateful, insensitive man. But she was right about something. Pressing the gas pedal, he drove off briskly and quickly disappeared. All the way he pondered Louise's words and analyzed his life. So far, everything had suited him. Austin considered himself a reasonably intelligent, educated, well-bred man. He was in demand with the opposite sex and authority among friends. He was used to people looking at his mouth and fawning over him. And here's some girl who knew nothing about his life, constantly wiping his nose. On the one hand, he found himself thinking that he liked Louise. Unlike the others, she did not ingratiate herself with him. On the contrary, she openly expressed her opinion. But at the same time, that was what annoyed him about her. Sometimes Austin felt that his mother's housekeeper thought too much of herself. The man, engrossed in his thoughts, did not notice that he had reached the house. Once inside, he saw that his mother was still sitting in the same place. At some point, the man felt his heart squeeze. "Mom, do you need help?" he asked. Donna flinched in surprise. "No," she said, and then suddenly added, "This is the first time you've called me Mom in a long time. I've been mom and mother to you for a long time. Did something happen?" "No," Austin answered. "I just suddenly realized that I have no one else but you." Tears glistened in the woman's eyes. Austin, pretending not to notice, went quickly upstairs and hid in his room. The next day, Louise arrived at Donna's house as promised. Austin wasn't home, but his mother wouldn't stop talking about him. "You know, Austin's changed a lot since he met you. I think you're having a very positive effect on him," she shared with the housekeeper. "Don't exaggerate, Donna," the girl asked. "I don't take any credit for it. It's just that people change. Your son must have realized that you are the closest and dearest person to him." Having finished cleaning, Louisa said goodbye to the landlady and went to the institute. After class, she got an unexpected surprise. Austin met her on the way to the bus stop. He was holding a small but beautiful bouquet. "Hi, these are for you," he said and handed them to Louise. At times like this, Louise felt awkward. She still didn't trust Austin. It seemed to her that a man could not have changed so dramatically in such a short time. "It's unnecessary," she said, looking at the flowers. "Why did you come here? First of all, the flowers are a thank you for my mother. Thank you for helping her. Second, stop yelling at me. I'm only 5 years older than you. You don't have to thank me for something I do with heart and pleasure, especially not for free. Give those flowers to Donna." "You again?" Austin looked at the girl reproachfully. "I will stop howling if you promise not to come to my institute with flowers anymore," she said. "I don't want my classmates to start gossiping about me." "What's wrong with a girl's boyfriend coming to pick her up?" he asked. "You're not my boyfriend," Louise reminded him. "All right," agreed the young man. "I promise not to compromise you again. Just take this bouquet." Louise sighed and took the flowers. "I can give you a ride to the garden," Austin offered. "It's not worth it. I'd rather take the bus. It's safer that way." Austin grinned his trademark smile and replied, "I promise to drive slowly and deliver it safely on time." "Okay," Louise gave in, one last time. The young man headed towards Austin's automobile. To the girl's surprise, he was as gallant and attentive as ever. Ahead of her by a few steps, the man opened the door in front of the passenger and kindly offered her his hand. It did not go unnoticed by Louise that this time Austin drove the car slowly and carefully. At some point, it seemed to her that there was a completely different person beside her. Not so long ago, the arrogant snob had magically transformed himself into a well-mannered, intelligent man, pleasant in every way. On the one hand, Louise liked this change in him. On the other hand, it frightened her, something fake about it. "What are you thinking about?" Austin asked, noticing the passenger's absent gaze out the window. "About how a man can change in a few days," replied Louise. "Are you referring to me?" he clarified. "Yes, I don't believe in such metamorphoses," she admitted. "You're obviously up to something. I just don't know what it is." "You're wrong," the young man tried to persuade her. "It was my behavior before that was fake. I'm used to acting like that," he admitted. "Women like confident, persistent, goal-oriented men." "Confident but not cocky," Louise corrected him. "Persistent but not insolent, determined but not pushy." "So you think I'm a pushy, self-assured, impudent man?" Austin concluded. "Yes." Louise's answer discouraged him. He was still unaccustomed to her honesty and directness, and at the same time, it turned him on. No woman had so far stirred his mind as Louise had. Her behavior aroused mixed feelings in him. On the one hand, he was magnetically drawn to her. On the other, he wanted to punish her for her unapproachability and intransigence. "Here we are," Austin announced, stopping outside the nursery. "I'll wait for you here." "No need. It's just a short walk from here to our house." we'll walk with Martha." "I don't mean to be intrusive," the man said, mindful of the conversation. "But could I keep you company?" Louise shrugged her shoulders and headed toward the kindergarten. Her sister ran out to meet her. Noticing Austin behind her, she asked in her ear, "What's he doing here?" "We met by chance," Louise explained in a whisper, "and he offered me a ride." "Did he also give you flowers by chance?" she asked in a whisper, and then she said, "I don't like him anyway, even with flowers." After walking the sisters to the entrance, Austin suddenly suggested, "Maybe on the weekend we can walk in the park or go to the zoo together." "No," Martha replied firmly. "We had other plans." Louise was used to her younger sister's development, and Austin was discouraged by the little girl's answer. But quickly gathering his thoughts, he asked, "Do you have dolls?" "Lots," Martha replied. "Did they have their own dollhouse?" After a short pause, the girl said, "No, they live in my and Louisa's house." "But everyone should have their own house," Austin insisted. "Would you like us to buy your dolls a house too?" The pause dragged on. Martha could feel the thought process going on in her head. Like any girl, she wanted a dollhouse, but she still didn't trust Austin. Realizing the reason for the silence, the man turned to Louise. "Do you mind if I give your sister a gift as a sign of reconciliation? I'm not sure it's right or necessary. Let's skip the expensive gifts." "I'm about to get my first paycheck," the man said. "I'd like to spend it on something nice." Louise wanted to reply, but Austin beat her to it, adding, "I promise I won't neglect my mom." "But that was unnecessary," she insisted. "Thank you for the ride and for seeing her off," she said, and taking her sister's hand in hers, she disappeared down the driveway. On the morning of the day off, the girls were in no hurry. They had no special plans, so they lay in their beds and talked. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Jumping up like a scalded woman, Louise ran to the bathroom, shouting on the way, "Who?" "It's me, Austin," came a voice from outside the door. "Wait," commanded the girl and disappeared into the bathroom. Martha had made her bed and her sister's, and after glancing around the room and making sure everything was in order, she opened the door. The man was holding a huge box. As he crossed the threshold, he set it on the floor and said to Martha, "This is for you. Unpack it." The girl looked from the giver to the gift with disbelief. She guessed what was in the box, but did not dare to open it without her sister's permission. "Don't be shy," Austin urged her. "I promised you a doll's house, didn't I? Take it. I'm not going to carry this weight back, am I?" Martha's last argument seemed reasonable, and she began to remove the wrapping. After a hasty shower, Louise came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. She hadn't expected to see Austin here, so she froze in surprise for a few seconds and then disappeared out the door again. That was enough time for the man to get a glimpse of the housekeeper's chiseled figure. Her smooth legs, graceful arms, straight posture, slim waist, and narrow shoulders were as if chiseled by a talented craftsman. In such a way, Louise stirred Austin's imagination even more. In his mind, he was already imagining her in his arms. He had never wanted a woman so badly in his life. A moment later, Louise came out in the robe she had to get out of the laundry basket. But even in her crumpled housecoat, she looked very attractive and desirable. "I told you not to open the door to strangers," she reproached her sister. "But he's not a stranger," Martha replied, taking the doll's house out of its wrapping. "What the hell is this?" her older sister asked sternly, looking at the toy. "Now my dolls will have their own house," the girl said happily. "It's too expensive," Louisa said. "We can't accept it." Martha, engrossed in the toy, did not even react to her sister's words. "But I'm not going to take it back to the store," Austin replied. "They won't take it back without its wrapping." "Look how happy your sister is. Can't you take it away from her?" "Then I'll give you the money from my paycheck," Louisa suggested. "I will not take money from you," replied the young man. "But if you have extra, you can take me to the movies." "All right," she agreed. "But first, we need breakfast." While Louise made pancakes, Austin helped Martha set up the dollhouse. From the outside, they all looked like a close-knit family. Despite her distrust of the hostess's son, Louise watched her sister and the guest play with amusement. For a moment, she thought that he was indeed a kind and decent man. And the incident of molestation in the drawing room was only a misunderstanding, which Austin had long since repented of. The pancakes are wonderful. Praised the hostess. You haven't tasted Louisa's cakes yet, Martha added with pride in her voice. Martha, you have to address adults as you, her sister corrected her. Uncle Austin told me to call him you, she said. Louise looked questioningly at the guest. Austin, as if nothing had happened, said, "Why the ceremony? I think it's easier to communicate this way." After breakfast, Austin, Louise, and Martha went to the biggest shopping and entertainment center in the city. There was everything there: a movie theater, a cafe, a restaurant, a playground. "Yes, I'm sorry, Austin replied, getting up from his seat. "Time flies with you. Why don't we all go out again sometime?" "Maybe." Austin stood on the doorstep and looked at Louise. He wanted to kiss her desperately, but he was afraid of ruining the relationship he had just established. Shuffling from foot to foot like a schoolboy, he decided to ask, "Can I kiss you?" Instantly, the girl's cheeks flushed. She wanted to say no, but her tongue wouldn't listen to her. A second pause, and Louise felt Austin's moist lips on hers. Without wanting to, the girl reached for him. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Austin put his arms around her waist and pulled her to him. This kiss, filled with tenderness and affection, was nothing like that first kiss. Louise felt herself starting to lose control of herself and the situation. But suddenly, Austin pulled her away from him just as gently and said, "See you soon." Donna was on the mend quickly. Louise came to her house every day and cleaned her house. She also had to cook meals now. It was good that the vacations had started and the housekeeper had a lot of free time. Martha became a frequent visitor to Donna's house, who was happy to spend time with her while Louise did her chores. Austin rushed home every day after work to spend time with Louise. Donna noticed her son's rapprochement with the housekeeper and did not hide her joy about it. "I think Austin has seriously fallen in love with you," she once shared with Louise. "It's like he's been replaced. It's true what they say. Love works wonders." Louise only smiled at these words and lowered her eyes in embarrassment. She too saw this change, which made her look at the man with different eyes. She felt that she was falling more and more in love with him every day. Alone with Austin, her heart was racing as if it was trying to jump out. Only a little worm in her head kept her mind on her own. It was like it was drilling at the same place, not allowing her to relax and forget. Martha, in spite of her young age, was thinking naturally. "Uncle Austin may be a good man, but he's not for you," she told her sister privately. "You're different. You seem to like him, don't you?" Louise asked. "Yes," she confirmed, "but he's not real. He's too perfect." When Donna's cast was removed, she was offered to go to a local sanatorium for rehabilitation. Without much thought, the woman agreed, taking a promise from Louisa that she would take care of the house during her absence. "Maybe Marta could come with me," the landlady suggested it. "It would be a nice change of scenery for the girl, and I wouldn't be bored." Martha gladly agreed to Aunt Donna's suggestion, and 2 days later they left for the sanatorium together. That same evening, Austin arranged a romantic candlelight dinner for Louise. Of course, the dinner was prepared by Louise, but while she was busy in the kitchen, he set the table in the living room, dimmed the lights, lit candles, and put on some nice music. What a surprise. The girl was surprised. Like in the best houses of Paris. "Why Paris? We're not the best either," I noticed. Demonstratively pushing back his chair, the young man invited Louise to the table. Playing along with him, the girl, lifting her skirt slightly, walked solemnly to the chair and sat down. Austin unsealed a bottle of red wine and filled the glasses. "I propose a toast to us," he said. Taking a sip, Louise put the glass back, but Austin made the toast again and again. Even a dense dinner did not relieve the girl, who was not used to alcoholic drinks, from a slight dizziness. "Maybe we should dance," Austin suggested, and taking Louise by the hand, led her to the center of the living room. To the quiet, peaceful sounds of music, the young people slowly twirled in a dance. Despite her outward calmness, Louise's insides were trembling. Every touch of Austin stirred her. Her heart periodically tried to jump out of her chest. The wine and the ever-present scent of Austin's cologne were intoxicating. At some point, Louise's legs felt cotton and her eyelids felt heavy. She rested her head on her beau's shoulder and felt his muscles tense. At the same moment, he picked her up in his arms and carried her to his room. "What are you doing?" Louise asked. "Don't say anything," Austin asked in a whisper. Going up to the room, he put her on the bed and laid down next to her. Feeling the girl's inner resistance, he kept her in his arms. "I want you to be mine," he whispered and kissed her. This time his kiss was longer and more demanding than all the previous ones. Louise gasped with desire. That little worm that had been keeping her down until now had disappeared without a trace. She could no longer think or analyze what was happening. She just wanted to enjoy the moment. Louise gave free rein to her feelings and desires. The girl wrapped her two arms around the man's neck and whispered, "Yes." She didn't notice when Austin took off her clothes. In those rare moments of consciousness, Louise only noticed that he was gentle with her, then, like a wild animal, rushed at his prey. The pain and fear faded into the background as Austin whispered sweet words in her ear. Never before had she experienced such a flurry of feelings all at once. She felt like she was going to burst, but she didn't. Unable to contain herself any longer, she moaned. From time to time, her moans turned to screams and then back to silence. Soon, her inner trembling spilled outward. Louise was shaking as if from the cold. Her whole body was whimpering. It was not obeying her. Suddenly, Austin's rapid, rhythmic movements became slower until finally they stopped altogether. With a deep exhalation, the man collapsed beside her. Silence hung in the room. Louise's consciousness suddenly cleared. She slowly pulled the blanket over her, shamefully covering herself. Austin lay with his eyes closed and said nothing. Finally, after a few minutes, he got up and headed for the bathroom. Louise didn't know what she should do. On the one hand, she realized that nothing supernatural had happened between them. On the other hand, she was ashamed of her weakness. While she pondered, Austin showered and returned to her, wrapping his torso in a towel. Seeing the girl's embarrassment, he lay down next to her and asked, "How are you feeling?" "Fine," she replied faintly. "You really didn't have anyone before me," Austin said, as if still in doubt. "I thought there were no more of them left nowadays." Louise said nothing, but pulled the blanket tighter around her. "I'm going to get some water," Austin said. "Would you like some?" The girl nodded and, after waiting for him to leave the room, headed for the bathroom. Standing under the shower, she could still feel Austin's touches and kisses on her body. The recent events flashed through her mind, and his voice echoed in her ears. The warm water gradually brought Louise to her senses. Wrapping a large terry towel around herself, she stepped out of the bathroom. Austin was sprawled out on the bed on top of the blanket, looking at her intently. He had his trademark smirk on his face, which made her uncomfortable. But in the next second, Austin smiled and, patting the vacant spot on the bed next to him, said affectionately, "Come to my place, pretty girl." Louise crouched down next to him on the bed uncomplainingly. Austin put his arm around her shoulders and drew her to him and kissed her. "You're hot," he said jokingly. "I didn't expect you to be so passionate. Would you mind doing it again sometime?" Donna and Martha had been at the sanitarium for 2 weeks. All that time, she had been calling her son and the housekeeper periodically to tell them what she was doing and to ask about news from home. Austin went to work every day, and Louise returned to her studies after a short rest. She was still doing chores, but now she often stayed overnight at Donna's house. Ever since Louise had become close to Austin, she had missed him. He was late from work for a good reason, or he had a meeting with friends, or he had to visit a sick boss. Soon Donna and Martha returned home. The girl had a lot of impressions. She told her sister about the wonderful time she had spent with Aunt Donna at the sanatorium. Louise was happy for her, but she couldn't hide her worries about the changes in her life from her hostess. "Tell me what's going on with you and Austin," the woman asked when she was alone with the housekeeper. "Everything is fine," Louise replied, embarrassed by her question. "You don't have to lie to me," Donna asked. "I was happy to learn that you had started a relationship with my son, but I don't see joy in your eyes." "I'm glad," Louise said, "but I think Austin's been spending less time with me. I think he's gotten colder." "Don't make it up," Donna reassured her. "It's just that men can't devote themselves to a woman completely. It's us women who dissolve into them when we fall in love." Louise continued to run the household at Austin's mother's house, but after her return, she no longer stayed overnight. Austin didn't insist. After seeing Louise home, he would go about his business and often return well past midnight. Donna did not like her son's late nights out, but she did not give him away, hoping that he would come to his senses and change. As time passed, however, nothing much changed. The woman noticed how sad her housekeeper was. She felt sorry for her, so she decided to intervene. "Austin, we need to talk," she said sternly one day to her son, who was going to another meeting with his friends. "Mother, not now," he asked her. The word mother cut Donna's hearing. Austin had been calling her mom lately, and she was insanely pleased with it. What had happened today? Why mom again? "Did something happen to you?" she asked. "Trouble at work?" "No, everything's fine there. I'm still getting a tiny salary," the son replied in a disgruntled tone. "I've offered you many times to go into business with me," the woman reminded him. "I don't want my mother to be my boss," Austin said. "When you're ready to retire, then call me." "What's the matter with Louise?" she asked me directly. "What do you mean?" Austin pretended not to understand. "Don't pretend. Louise is a good girl. She'll make a fine wife. You're lucky she paid attention to you." "What? She took notice of me," he interjected dismissively. "She should be thanking the universe that a man like me came her way." At that time, the housekeeper had finished cleaning and was on her way to the living room to say goodbye to the owners. The conversation between mother and son made her stop outside the door. Louise had never allowed herself to eavesdrop on other people's conversations before, but this one concerned her directly, so she put her ear to the keyhole for a better hearing and froze. "I'm sure she's grateful," her mother parried. "You've been dating for months now. When are you going to propose to her?" "What are you talking about, Mom?" I asked a normal question. When young people date, they make plans for the future. "Are you thinking of marrying Louise?" "No, of course not." Austin grinned. "Who am I? And who is she? Do you think I'm going to marry some housekeeper?" "She's only a housekeeper because of circumstances," the landlady said. "But you know she's about to get her high school diploma, right?" "So what?" Austin didn't give up. "What difference does it make? She's a simpleton. I'm attracted to more interesting girls with big boobs and empty heads." Donna got angry. "I wish she was. There's no shame in going out with them." "Austin, I had a better opinion of you," she admitted. "I thought you were a smart, serious, forward-thinking man, and you still can't get over it." "Mother, don't lecture me," he asked. "I won't let you hurt Louise. The girl has been through enough in this life." "I'm not going to hurt her," the man replied. "Isn't that how it works? You meet and then you run away." Seeing that her son could not be persuaded, Donna bitterly waved her hand and left the living room. Frustrated, she headed for the stairs, not even noticing the housekeeper standing outside the door. Louise didn't move. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. She realized that Austin had deceived her. When she returned home, she cried into her pillow all night. The next morning, she woke up with a firm decision to sever all relations with the family in whose house she had worked for many months. Arriving at Donna's house, Louise made her way to the landlady's house. Austin had already left for work. Trying to hide the traces of her worries from the housekeeper, the landlady asked with a smile, "How are you, Louise? How's Martha?" Not wanting to beat around the bush, the girl said directly, "Donna, I heard you talking to your son yesterday. You do realize that under these circumstances I can't continue to work in your house." "Maybe things will change," she said with hope in her voice. "Maybe Austin would come to his senses." "You can't force a favor," Louise said firmly, "and I don't like to talk to him and pretend that nothing has happened." "Yes, I understand," agreed the landlady. "You're probably right. I'm sorry about what happened." "It wasn't your fault," Louise replied. "You don't have to apologize to me for your son. He is a grown man and he can take responsibility for his own actions." Louise hadn't worked at Donna's house for several days. She was completely absorbed in her studies to get Austin out of her mind. Martha realized that something was going on with her sister, but she didn't ask her questions unless she got an answer. Donna, feeling guilty, didn't abandon the girls. She often came to visit them with gifts. The women tried not to bring up the subject of Austin, pretending that he did not exist. When Donna came to visit her sisters again, she said, "Louise, I have an offer for you that you can't refuse." "Intrigued," smiled the girl. "I want to take you into my business," she informed me. "In a few months, you'll get your diploma and you'll be looking for a job. I suggest you skip the job search and come to me for an internship right now." "But I probably won't be able to do that, Louise said nervously. I don't understand anything about your business. What am I for? Donna asked cheerfully. I'll teach you everything. If you want to leave and work in your specialty, I won't hold you back. And if you like it, I promise you career advancement and a good salary. Say yes, Louise. Martha jumped up and down. After a moment's thought, Louise smiled and nodded in agreement. I'll do my best, she promised. Thank you. A few months flew by. All this time, Louise was writing her thesis and interning at Donna's company. The former owner, now director, was pleased with the new employee. Louise was a quick learner. She quickly joined the team and earned the respect of her colleagues. Now she devoted all her free time to herself and her little sister. Louise, knowing about her natural beauty, nevertheless, following the advice of her boss, began to visit beauty salons, watch her appearance, updated her closet, and enrolled in the gym. For a diamond to become a diamond, it needs a professional cut, Donna liked to say. And Louise had learned that. Young men looked at her and tried to ask her out every now and then. But Louise didn't have affairs at work. The memories of her failed relationship with Austin were still fresh in her mind. The girl was not ready to jump into the maelstrom again. One day, the director of the company came to work in a bad mood. Never before had she allowed herself to raise her voice at her subordinates, and on this day her shouting was heard from the very morning. Employees did not leave their workplaces, afraid to be seen by her. After gathering her courage, Louisa entered the principal's office and saw that the woman who had just raged was standing at the window, wiping tears from her face. Donna, is something wrong? Louisa ran up to her and asked, Can I help you? The principal didn't react to her words for a while, but then she turned, looked at the girl carefully, and answered, Austin is going to get married. The news hit Louise like a blow to the head. All this time she had been trying in vain to forget Austin. She couldn't say that she still loved him, but his desire to marry someone else had hurt her feelings. Louise swallowed the lump in her throat and said as calmly as she could, It had to happen sometime. Maybe Austin will settle down now. I hoped until the last day that he'd come to his senses and come back to you, Donna admitted. I am flattered by your words, Louisa replied, but I don't think I could forgive him, so let him be happy with his girlfriend. The headmistress hugged the girl and smiled with sadness in her eyes. What a pity my son never realized what goal he had lost. From now on, Louisa spent a lot of time in the principal's office. Donna wanted to share her worries about the upcoming celebration with someone, and she found no better listener than Louise. The last thing she wanted to know was the details of the preparations for Austin's marriage, but she didn't dare to tell his mother, so she listened to her stories for hours. It was clear from Donna's remarks that she wasn't happy with her daughter-in-law. A narcissistic painted doll, she said of her, born with a golden spoon in her mouth and never took it out her whole life. Her father spoiled her, instilled in her that everything is bought and sold, and when he was gone, he died 3 years ago. His wife, a slacker, spent all his $1 million fortune on lovers. Now, with no one to help her, she decides to set up her daughter. What they don't know is that Austin's broke and living off me. Why don't you tell them? Louise asked. Why should I? Jasmine comes to our house and talks to me for hours about her great love for my son. Why destroy such love? And Austin? Does he love her? I don't know. Sometimes I don't think he's capable of feeling that way at all. I've decided to stay out of his life. Let them live as they please. Finally, the day finally arrived. Despite Donna's pleas for a low-key wedding celebration, the young couple feasted on the world. Of course, it was not without the financial support of mothers. Donna immediately warned her son that the wedding and the wedding gift will be her last investment in him. And the mother of the bride collected the remnants of the untold wealth of her deceased husband and gave them to her daughter's wedding on the condition that after marriage, she will return everything to her with more than enough. After the festivities, the newlyweds went on a wedding trip, which Donna gave them, and she herself returned to work. The director answered congratulations and questions from her subordinates dryly and reluctantly. One could sense that the woman was worried about her son's future, but she did not change her principles. He is a grown man, not stupid, with a good education, Louise reassured Austin's mother. He'll be fine. You'll laugh when you remember how you shed tears for nothing. How kind you are, Donna said, not hiding her admiration. God give you a good fiancé. He will, laughed the girl, all in good time. My man, I want to talk to you, said Austin on his return from the wedding trip. Let's talk, Donna agreed. Are you in some kind of trouble? No, the man was miffed. I just wanted to learn your business from the inside, so to speak. Well, this is unexpected. You've always been against the mother superior. Everything in this world is changeable, Austin replied philosophically. I changed my mind. Maybe you'll want to hand over your authority to me too, when you're convinced that I'm doing a good job with your enterprise. Austin and his young wife had returned from a wedding trip the day before. Being weary on the road, they went straight to their room, whence they did not come out all the evening. It was not until the next morning, while Jesmyn was lying in bed, that Austin came into the parlor and had an unexpected conversation with his mother. Well, I don't mind, Donna said. My business is going to be lambasted by you anyway, so it's better to get into it beforehand. When are you planning on going to work? Oh, we could do it today. I don't think I'll get into the process right away, so first I'll get to know the staff, get used to the office. Mother grinned and looked at her watch and said, Then you have 15 minutes. I don't like my employees to be late. I'll wait for you at the car. While Austin searched for a clean iron shirt, the time for packing was over. He kissed his sleeping wife at the last moment and got into the car with his mother, who had already left. I didn't even have time for breakfast, he complained. Why didn't your wife see you off? The woman asked. Jesmyn is still asleep. Doesn't she have to go to work today? My man, what are you doing? Austin grinned. In her family, women don't work. Ours do, Donna retorted. Or does she think I'm going to feed and clothe her for the rest of her life? I will. Austin stood up for his lady. I'll be able to provide for my woman and then for my children. And what will your woman do? Home. A wife's duty is to keep the hearth and bear children. Donna looked at her son in silence and continued to follow the road. Soon they arrived at the factory. Austin walked in step with his mother, trying to establish himself as a strict boss in front of his subordinates from the first minutes. He had been to his parents' kingdom many times as a teenager, but then he had been here as a guest, and now he had come with the purpose of taking the throne. Practically nothing had changed here, Austin noticed, just more employees. Yes, production is expanding, business is booming, Donna agreed. With the right management, it's a profitable business. We're here. Where? Austin didn't understand. Your office, if memory serves, is on the top floor. I thought I'd be sitting next to you. Sitting, my dear son, is not going to work, she replied. If you're here to work, you'll have to work hard. I'm used to being alone in my office. Here's your workplace. The director pointed to a vacant desk among the other desks where the employees were working. Austin glanced around the large workshop and looked at his mother with a puzzled look. You're not going to put me in the shop, are you? He asked. You wanted to get to know the production from the inside, she reminded him. When you master the technology, I will transfer you to the quality department. Mom, but I'm your son. Austin was indignant. You're my employee here. The director replied, turned around and walked toward the stairs. If something is unclear, ask your colleagues. The man did not argue with his mother, deciding to continue the conversation in the evening at home. It was not until lunchtime that he managed to have breakfast and lunch. Sitting at the table with a bored look, he watched the workers. Suddenly, his gaze stopped on a very elegant young woman. It was clear from her demeanor and mannerisms that she held not a small position in this enterprise. Mesmerized by her beauty and grace, Austin did not immediately recognize the well-groomed, blooming young woman as Louise. He had, of course, heard from his mother that she had invited her former housekeeper to join her at the company, but he had not expected to see such a change in her. There was not a trace of that simpleton left. She walked with a confident stride, responding to the greetings of the employees with a slight nod. Austin, as if mesmerized, did not take his eyes off her. The episodes of their date suddenly appeared in his mind. He remembered how he pursued her, and once he'd gotten her, he lost interest. It seemed to him that he even remembered the taste and smell of the food she cooked. Have you had lunch yet? Came his mother's voice from upstairs. Looking up, Austin saw his mother and nodded to her. She put the tray of food on the table and sat down across from her son. Have you changed your mind about working at my company? She asked. Austin looked at Louise and asked, Who does your housekeeper work here? You mean Louise? The woman clarified. She's my right-hand woman. I don't know how I managed without her. When I'm away, she runs the place. Wow, so some housekeeper is the boss and the director's son is just a laborer. Louise learned the manufacturing process from scratch, and she's a quick study, Donna said. If you try as hard as she did, you'll soon have your own office. Austin wasn't excited about the prospect. He'd assumed he'd be in charge right away, but he'd miscalculated. If it hadn't been for his wife, he would have left his mother that very day. But Jessamine insisted that it was time for him to take the whole business into his own hands, not to depend on his mother. So the man got up and headed into the shop to his workplace. Hello, dear. Met Jessamine, her husband, after the first day of work at the new place. How are you doing? Normal, Austin replied in a tired voice. What are we having for dinner tonight? I thought we were going out to a restaurant to celebrate your first day as boss. Jessamine, what restaurant? What boss? I don't think I've ever been as tired as I am today. What were you doing? The girl asked. Working. So we're not going to the restaurant, she said, stretching her lips. Well, what is it, mistress? Set the table. Donna, who had just entered the house, asked and went to her room. After changing her clothes, she went down to the dining room and seeing the empty table asked, Are we having dinner tonight? Mom, Jessamine suggested we celebrate my new assignment at the restaurant, Austin said. What's there to celebrate? The woman was surprised. When you become a boss, then we'll celebrate. Until then, I see no reason to celebrate. I do not understand, admitted Jessamine. And now you are what, if not the boss? And now your husband is an ordinary employee in the shop, explained his mother. A good boss is the one who rose to this post from below. The mother-in-law's answer dumbfounded her daughter-in-law. At first she stood with her mouth open and silently flapped her eyes, and then she grinned. My husband's a laborer? Yes, Donna confirmed. You can be proud of him. He's a hard worker. What have you been doing all day? I went to my mom's, and then I went to the beauty parlor with her. I just got back, said Jessamine. I'm really tired and hungry. Why don't we go to a restaurant after all? Austin looked at his mother, but she turned and went into the kitchen. Jessamine, he turned to his wife. I spent a lot of money on vacation. The paycheck isn't due for a while. If we go to the restaurant now, we'll be broke by the end of the month. What are you talking about? She asked with irritation in her voice. I married one of the richest men in town, and now you're telling me that we don't have any money. You know what kind of spending we've been doing for the last month, don't you? My card isn't unlimited. Ask your mother. She won't refuse her only son. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Austin replied. We're adults and we have to support ourselves. She doesn't have to support us. She's got a good job. Jessamine was indignant, referring to her mother-in-law. She earns so much money and lives with her son. When you were single, all right, someone had to look after you. But now that you're married, you might want to think about moving out. Where would she go? Austin asked. It's her house. Why does she need such a big house all by herself? We have a family, we'll have children. An apartment would be enough for her. At that moment, Donna appeared in the living room where the newlyweds were. Let's go to dinner, she called her son and daughter-in-law. Already sitting at the table, she warned Austin's wife. Don't think it's going to be like this every day. There's never been a slacker in this family. If you don't work, you better keep the house in order and cook dinner. I'm not your housekeeper or cook, snapped at Jessamine. I'm not going to ruin my manicure and hands by scrubbing your floors. Donna looked questioningly at her son, then at her daughter-in-law. What did you get married for? Donna asked. It is the husband's duty to provide for his wife. And what is the wife's duty? Austin's mother asked. The mother-in-law's question stumped Jessamine. She shifted her gaze from her husband to her mother-in-law and tried in vain to find the right words. Finally, the girl gathered her thoughts and answered, It is the wife's duty to bear and bring up children. Good, said Donna, and who will feed and wash them? There should be a housekeeper for that, reasoned Jessamine. In case you haven't noticed, we don't have a housekeeper, replied her mother-in-law. I've been doing the housework myself so far. I think I can still make myself a bowl of soup and iron a dress, but I won't take care of my son anymore. He has a wife now. If you hire a housekeeper, I won't mind, but you'll have to pay for it yourself. After dinner, Donna washed the dishes and went to her room, leaving the newlyweds alone. I don't think your mother likes me, Jasmine concluded. She's always trying to embarrass me in front of you. Don't make it up. Austin stood up for his mother. It's just that she wants to keep you busy. I see. I don't think we're going to get along in this house together. We should give her a hint about moving out. Why don't you talk to your mother? Talking to her wouldn't be a problem, Austin said. I just don't want you and me to have to look for an apartment. Long sleep, son, remarked Donna, putting on her jacket and heading for the exit. You're leaving already? Austin clarified. Aren't you going to wait for me? I warned you, I don't like it when employees are late, and I'm never late myself, her mother replied and disappeared out the door. Austin, disgruntled, wandered into the kitchen. The table was empty, and there was nothing in the refrigerator that looked like a cooked breakfast. Deciding to grab a snack on his way to work, he slammed the refrigerator door shut and went to his room. His spouse was sleeping like a baby. Austin looked in the closet and found no iron shirt. Jasmine, he called to his wife quietly. Iron my shirt. The girl only rolled over to the other side. Jasmine, he repeated louder. I have nothing to go to work in. The wife opened her eyes, stretched, and replied with a smile. Then don't go. She reached out her arms to her husband and pulled him into bed, wrapping him in her arms. Austin didn't resist much. He liked it when Jasmine was gentle and affectionate with him. After lying in bed with his wife, Austin looked at his watch and realized that he was finally late for work. That's great, he said, getting out of bed, but Mom won't like my absences. I could end up unemployed. Oh, come on. Jasmine grinned, grumbles, and will return. She won't kick out her only son. You don't know my mother well. You're just like a little delinquent child. Laughed Jasmine. Maybe we'd better go out. You've completely stopped taking me to restaurants. I explained everything to you. We have no money now. After these words, the girl became furious. I don't want to hear it. I married a millionaire and he turned out to be a starving man. Either you talk to your mother today and dot all the I's and dot all the I's, or Jasmine paused to think of the second option, or I'll have to do it. Austin didn't show up for work until lunchtime. The principal immediately called him into her office. It was clear from her stern look and stern tone that there was no good news. When she was alone with her son, she said, You asked to work for me. I kindly agreed, brought you to the enterprise, explained all the procedures. But you decided they didn't concern you. If you change your mind, I won't hold you back. Just write your notice and go. Austin assumed that this was the format of their conversation, so he prepared himself morally. My man, he said to her in a calm voice, let's not be too hasty. I'm your only heir, so sooner or later you'll have to hand over the reins to me. Why all this circus with a simple laborer, then a foreman, and so on? Everyone should be in their place. I didn't go to university so I can work as a laborer. If it weren't for these, as you say, simple laborers, you wouldn't be living in a huge house now and eating caviar sandwiches. Speaking of sandwiches, Austin caught on. I'm late today because I spent a long time making breakfast and ironing my shirt. Why doesn't your wife cook and iron for you? I thought you said the husband was the provider and the wife the keeper. Jasmine does not feel like a mistress in our house, complained Austin, and I can understand that. You can't have two mistresses in the same kitchen. I agree. So think about a separate place to live. That way, maybe your Jasmine will be a better hostess sooner. Austin realized that the conversation was not going the way he wanted it to, so he decided to leave. His mother stopped him on the doorstep. And think about the job. And for today's absenteeism, I will deduct from your salary. Only when he left the principal's office, Austin gave vent to his feelings. What a mother. When I was a kid, she was at work 24 hours a day, and now she's taking over my upbringing. It's too late for that. We'll see who'll be the first to come begging for help. You're not getting any younger. He turned to her in his heart. And you're not taking your business with you. And when you're having a hard time coping, you'll call me yourself. Are you all right? A familiar voice pulled him out of his thoughts. Austin looked up and saw Louisa in front of him. She was walking toward the principal with a stack of file folders. The girl looked at him as if he were a stranger. Not a single muscle on her face trembled. Austin even thought that she might not have recognized him. Louise? You look good. He perked up. How are you? Thank you. The girl replied calmly. I'm doing fine. And you? I thought you looked upset. You seemed upset. Well, okay. She shrugged her shoulders and continued on her way. Wait, Austin called out to her. Why don't we meet tonight? We can sit and talk. No, Louise said firmly. I don't date married men, and there's nothing to talk about. Without waiting for the former suitor's answer, the girl went to the principal's office. Austin stood and watched her. Miniature, as if chiseled by the hand of a master, elegantly dressed in expensive stiletto shoes, she walked down the corridor, swaying her hips. The young man could not take his eyes off her. As if mesmerized, he looked at her and remembered the nights he had spent with her. Pretty girl, on an exhalation said an unfamiliar male voice behind him. I can't take my eyes off her. Austin looked at the man in his work uniform with disdain and replied, Nothing much, and to close the subject added, and you go where you're going. Married life was getting more and more stressful for Austin. This was not how he had envisioned it. Jesmond was always demanding money, and his mother wouldn't give him a penny on principle. Previously, Austin's salary was enough for fun and partying. All other expenses were completely on his mother. Now he had to support himself and his wife, and as it turned out, his salary was not enough for all that. Austin, since we moved in, you've stopped spending time with me, my wife complained. Why don't we go to a club tonight? Jesmond, what club? I work from morning till night, and I barely have enough money to make ends meet. How long are you going to be your mother's apprentice? Asked the disgruntled wife. You can't make a deal with your own mother. I already have. Austin replied with irritation in his voice. You couldn't live in her house on your own, so we moved out. You can forget about clubs and restaurants now. All set. Jesmond was indignant. Your mother showed us from the very beginning that we are unnecessary. She was trying to get us to move into a rented apartment. If you'd done anything around the house, none of this would have happened. So it's all my fault? Well, I'm sorry. You should have told me you didn't want a wife, but a housekeeper. I've never held a rag or a frying pan since I was a kid. And you thought that if I married you, I'd become a cook and a cleaner. Wrong, hubby. If you can't earn a decent living for your wife, that's your problem, and you don't need to put it on your head. Letting out her anger, Jesmond immediately made a cute face, stretched her lips, and slammed her long eyelashes. Well, darling, why don't you ask your mother for money? Darling, Austin answered in her tone of voice. Don't you want to help me solve our problems? How? Like getting a job, he suggested. Oh, really? Are you kidding? What will my friends say? The girl said she was scared. They'll laugh at me. What's so funny about working? Only losers and peasants work. Do you think my mother and I are losers? Was your father, who made $1 million, a loser or a villain? Her husband's example stumped Jesmond, but she quickly thought of something to answer. My father is an exception, and you're a loser. Couldn't agree with your mother on the basics. Now you're just a coward to her. I have a feeling this conversation isn't going to get us anywhere, Austin concluded. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to learn how to run a household. I don't have a single fresh shirt left. The refrigerator is empty. There's a thick layer of dust on the furniture and on the floor. I can't go on like this. Yes, I agree. I don't want to live in filth. I'm sick of eating your scrambled eggs and store-bought dumplings. I'm going to my mom's. When you get rich, call me. Jesmond gathered her things and left, slamming the door loudly. Austin didn't hold her back, figuring that without her, it would be easier for him to go back to his mother's house and maybe get her to make him his deputy. And he had miscalculated. Donna, after listening to her son's sob story about his wife leaving him, decided to give him a second chance. She trusted him to run the business for the duration of her business trip. Donna had been planning to open a branch in another city for years. Now she was on her way to take care of it locally. She left Louise to look after Austin. The girl had studied the details of production during her work, and now she could understand all the nuances as well as the owner of the enterprise. Sometimes Donna would say in her heart of hearts, I wish you were my daughter. You and I would have broken mountains together. After his mother's departure, Austin returned to her home and the same day did not fail to tell the news to his wife. Jesmond had been living in her parents' house for a few days, but did not know how to move out. Her mother brought another Alfonso Lubovnik with whom she squandered the rest of her husband's fortune. She gradually sold off expensive furniture, her jewelry, and talked about selling the car and the house. To her daughter's unhappy reproaches, she answered the same thing. You first live with your husband as many years as I lived. Make him earn the same fortune as your father earned, and then dispose of it. When she learned of the change in Austin's life, Jasmine rushed to him the same day. We must take advantage of the situation, she instructed her husband. Now that you have access to your mother's money, you can transfer a small amount from the company account to your own account, which will be enough for us at first. And gradually you will gain her trust and take over the reins. Do you think it's so easy to withdraw money from the company's account? Austin doubted his wife's words. I'm sure it won't be that easy for you, she replied. You're a smart, educated man, and who would notice a small amount of money in such a huge enterprise? Besides, no one will dare say anything to you. You are the son of the owner, and therefore the future director. Austin didn't like his wife's idea, but she had a good point. Of course, he was entitled to his mother's money, and there might never be a better opportunity. After a little thought, the man decided to act. He realized that the old employees who had worked at the company since its founding, he did not help him. But among the newcomers, there was a young man, arrogant for the reward. After a few days, Austin and his wife could afford to hire a housekeeper, make a few new clothes, even pay off the debt to his mother Jasmine. Now they could go to clubs and dine in restaurants. To Louisa's questions, Austin answered in a commanding voice. Don't poke your nose where it doesn't belong. This is my mother's business, which means it's mine. I think Donna should know about it, the assistant said. She knows, the young man assured her. And you're just jealous. You didn't want to meet me, and now you're biting your elbows. But I'm not vindictive. My offer still stands. Why don't we have dinner tonight? I don't think your wife would like that, Louise replied. I don't think she's expecting me for dinner. Every day, Austin became more and more into the role of the boss. He spoke disrespectfully and in a commanding tone to his subordinates, was late for work, or even didn't show up at all. He constantly needed money for his beautiful life, and now he knew where to get it. Austin and Jasmine never denied themselves anything, but the beautiful life of the newlyweds did not last long. Donna soon found out about the shenanigans of her son and daughter-in-law. The business trip had to be interrupted early and returned to the city. Man, Austin was surprised to see his mother on the doorstep. What are you doing here? Living, she answered dryly. But you must be on a business trip. The young man still couldn't believe his eyes. I should be, Donna confirmed, picking up her suitcase. And you're supposed to be at work, shouldn't you? Austin glanced at his watch and remained silent. Just then, Jasmine's voice came from upstairs. Austin, well, how long do you have to wait? I'm going to die of thirst. Jasmine, my mom is here, Austin told his wife. 2 minutes later, his sister-in-law was already coming down the stairs to the living room. Donna, you're back already, she asked in an oily voice. We weren't expecting you so early. You mean you haven't had time to spend all my money? She said sternly. I don't know what you're talking about, Jasmine retorted. Austin is at work day and night. I hardly see him. From today, Austin will be at your complete disposal, the woman replied and turned to her son. You no longer work at the company. While Austin and Jasmine, dumbfounded by the arrival of their landlady, stood looking at each other, Donna dragged her suitcase to the second floor and disappeared into her room. But a moment later, she came out of her room and said, and have the house cleared out by tonight. Mother, this is my house too. Don't forget, I'm your own son. Austin resented her. You can't kick me out every time. The deed is mine, but you're not my son anymore. I will not tolerate traitors in my house. I've worked my whole life to make sure you had nothing. I gave you a great education. And how did you take advantage of all that? Steal from me? And then you have the nerve to tell me you're my son. Take your slacker wife and get out of my house. And if you dare disobey me, I'll file a police report on you. After the scandal, Donna locked herself in her room. Trying to distract herself from her heavy thoughts, she unpacked her suitcase, took a hot bath, and went to the company. The employees greeted her happily. Donna, I apologize for having to distract you from important negotiations, Louisa said upon meeting her. But don't apologize. The director interrupted her. You did the right thing. A little more and my negotiations would have become irrelevant. At that time, the chief accountant came into the director's office. Come in, Emerald. Donna invited her in, "And you stay," she said to Louise. The girl remained standing where she was. The chief accountant went to the director's desk and put down a folder of papers. "Here is the expense report for the entire period of your absence." Donna looked through the papers carefully and only after studying them to the end asked, "Who helped him?" "Darren," Emerald replied. "When I went on sick leave as you instructed, he stayed on for me. Austin promised him a generous reward. Of course, all the operations were not done without my knowledge and strictly out of the money you left behind." "I see," Donna said without hiding her disappointment. It was a pity that Austin had chosen to use the opportunity to prove himself as a leader. But I'd rather find out now that he's not capable of replacing me than have him ruin my business later. "Donna, did you arrange this trip on purpose?" Louise asked. "Did you know about it before I called?" "It was a real and very successful business trip," the director replied. "But I didn't immediately decide to entrust my son with the management of the company. I realized that he was inexperienced in this business and I wanted to see how he would deal with the issues that arose, who he would consult, and whether he would do anything at all. On Emerald's advice, I set aside a small amount of money for contingencies. Of course, Austin didn't know anything. It was a test," Donna sighed and added with bitterness in her voice, "and he didn't pass it." For several days, the principal looked depressed and preoccupied. She was silent most of the time. When she was alone with her thoughts, she sighed often. Louise tried to stay close to her. She genuinely felt sorry for Donna. It had been a long time since they had met, and she had become a close person to the sisters. Now that the woman was alone, they supported her, for which Donna was grateful to the girls. 10 years had passed. The relationship between mother and son could hardly be called kinship. Austin lived in a rented apartment and worked in a small office in his specialty. With his wife he had long since divorced, Jasmine found a better candidate. They never had children. Louise had been married for several years and was raising a daughter. Martha graduated from high school and went to college. Donna supported the girls in everything. Over the years they had, indeed, become family. One day the director called Louisa into her office and said, "I've decided to pass my brainchild on to you. You are the only one who will be able to carry on my work with dignity." "And you? Are you going somewhere?" "No, I'll be around. And if you need me, I'll help you. But I'm getting restless." "What about Austin?" she asked uncertainly. "He's your son." "Austin is my son by blood, nothing more. You and Martha are my daughters in spirit, and you are more dear to me. I know I can rely on you. Unfortunately for me, I never got to be a mom to Austin." "Donna, everyone makes mistakes." Louise tried to stick up for him. "I'm sure he's regretted it many times over. If he had, he'd come and apologize. But he still thinks he's wronged, and I have no desire to prove anything to him." Soon, Louise became director of the company. A year later, Donna died. It turned out she'd been ill for a long time, but she'd never told anyone. Austin, after the funeral, moved into his mother's house, but his joy was short-lived. Donna bequeathed the house to Louise and bought her son a spacious apartment. In addition, she opened a bank account in Austin's name, from which he could withdraw a certain amount each month. What a mother! The man cursed heartily when he heard about his parents' will. Leave everything to some housekeeper, and the son has to live in poverty. The housekeeper has done more for her than her own son. He heard a girl's voice from behind him. Martha looked at Austin with contempt and left the notary's office.
It had been snowing for days. The snowflakes were so delicate and the snowdrifts were so airy, like in a fairy tale read to little children by their mothers or grandmothers at bedtime. There was no wind and nothing prevented this beauty from sitting on the eyelashes and hair, making beautiful the already beautiful girls. Alice walked with her head held high and caught snowflakes with her mouth. They had another fight with her mom, Megan, who was against her relationship with John. She didn't like this handsome, tall brunette who had charmed her daughter as soon as he offered her a ride home. Despite his youth, he was making good money, having a profession that always kept him in the money. He was a plastic surgeon. Of course, not without the help of his father, Victor. He had his own clinic, where after the institute and came to work his son, John. John did not immediately become a leading surgeon, but the attitude of his son, his persistence, Victor was impressed. He was stingy on praise, but he supported his son and saw in him a future thrifty owner of his brainchild. Alice also liked the young man. She was not a beauty, but she was damn good. She was a part-time student at a law university and worked as a paralegal. The salary was low, but the prospect of working in the prosecutor's office forced the girl to work hard. Mom, where she could insert her 5 kopecks and tried to spoil the relationship between the young people. Today, Mom surpassed herself, having time to answer the cell phone while her daughter was taking a shower and say that Alice is busy all evening and asked not to disturb her. Mom, who asked you to answer John like that? We have plans for tonight. Do you want me to go and live in an apartment? It's about time I did, by the way. A grown girl should be separated from her parents. So you can go out with nasty boys without interference. Did I get that right? Ma, why did you like him so much? He's handsome, smart, rich, in love with me, and you're just some kind of demon in you. What kind of profession is a plastic surgeon, where 24/7 he has naked rich women shaking their tits in front of him to make them 5 times bigger? How much interest does he have left at the end of the day, let alone the week, for his wife? Answer me, please. Ma, what about male surgeons, gynecologists? I can't imagine that either. I'm asking you to wrap it up. Dustin, my friend Maria's son, wants to meet you. He's a good kid. He works in a bank, goes to economics, and he's the right age for you. I see you've already made up your mind for me. You shouldn't do that to me, Monty. I've known Dustin a long time. We used to sit in the sandbox together and sell each other sandpits. I only see him as a friend, and he sees me the same way, by the way. Megan wanted to say something else to her daughter in favor of Dustin, but Alice ran out of the house so as not to hear how her mother would use her last, most murderous argument, clutching at her heart. Call an ambulance. You're making me sick again. John had his own idea of a family. He wanted to live in the country in his own house, to have children, a wife who would not work, and a dog. He adored sheepdogs. But Alice did not want to stay at home. She liked to benefit the family both financially and morally, not to guard the house all day long with a sheepdog. John respected her opinion, but he did not understand why sitting at home could not develop and remain an interesting person. You can't rely only on your husband. A woman should also be sure that if she is alone, she will be able to provide for herself. We haven't married yet, and you're already alone. I don't like this attitude, John said in an offended tone. No, not at all. I meant that a woman should not live only at the expense of a man, but she should be worth something herself. No offense. And she smiled that inimitable smile that made a man's heart beat at an accelerated pace. A week later, Alice rented a room not far from her work, so she wouldn't have to pay for a cab when she was late. The room was in a 1-bedroom apartment she shared with a woman in her 40s who had come to Washington to work. Megan hadn't believed until the last minute that her daughter would decide to leave her parents. You're gonna take me to my grave? Where are you gonna go? Daria, I'm asking you to stop pushing her. You've given her a hard time. What? Are you talking to me? You. Remember when you ran away from home to your mom's loud tantrums? Nothing stopped you, not even her threats. Why don't you let your child breathe? Could you be quiet right now? No, I can't. Go on, my daughter, but don't forget to call us. Of course I won't. I know you're a good girl, and he kissed his favorite daughter. The mother stood offended, but kissed her too and asked them not to forget. Her parents stood at the window and waved at her. After looking around in her new abode, Alice immediately called John. Hi, I'm inviting you to a housewarming party. What kind of a housewarming? Did you move in? No, just me. I'll be living apart from my parents now. Write down the address. He arrived an hour later with a trunk full of groceries, champagne, and all the goodies from the restaurant. They had a feast for the world. They stayed up late. Both of them did not want to part, but they found the strength to say goodbye and say goodnight to each other. For her age, Alice was a wise enough girl, and John liked her not as an object for flirting, as there were plenty of such candidates, but as a person who could offer a real serious relationship. After she moved in, they both began to feel that they were a family. After work, he would go to the store, buy flowers for his beloved, then something for tea and hurry home. He'd, of course, dreamed a little bit about another house, but he began to understand the proverb that with a sweet paradise and in a shalash, Alice tried to make a cozy room from a foreign, cold housing. From the house, the girl brought lovely trinkets, books, changed the curtains, hung favorite photos, thereby turning the room into a cozy nest, which wanted to fly and spend all free time in it. They hardly ever quarreled with John, but if they did, It was a storm. It came on suddenly, but it was good that it didn't last forever. They were both resilient. Toward nightfall, he would go home, though he wanted to stay. John was more experienced than this girl and saw that she was not ready for such a close relationship and did not insist. It happened on New Year's Eve, which they decided to celebrate together in this small room. But the man wanted to be a real Santa Claus on New Year's Eve and surprise Alice. In the travel agency, he got to a real professional, and she recommended the Dominican Republic. So far away, it's at the end of the world, near Cuba, right in the Atlantic Ocean. That's right. But there won't be a decorated Christmas tree, the main attribute of New Year's Eve. Don't worry about that. The locals will put up palm trees instead of the usual Christmas trees, and you'll have a festive atmosphere. The sea there is warm. Sunsets will amaze you with their colors, and a large number of entertainment will not give boredom on New Year's vacations. The time difference will allow you to start celebrating New Year's Eve in the afternoon. You will dance on sandy beaches and build castles instead of snowmen, and there will be plenty of snow and cold for you when you get back. She had such a delicious story to tell, backed up by amazing photos that he gave up. He had to wish his beloved a happy new year a week early. She had to prepare herself morally, and most importantly, to prepare her mother. Sunday afternoon was a parents' day. She would arrive at their house in the afternoon and be there practically until evening. Sometimes we had to help with cleaning and ironing. Mom didn't like that. "Ma, I'm going to the Dominican Republic for New Year's Eve," Alice said and kept quiet. There was no answer, and she thought that her mother had not heard. "Ma, I hear you. I'm just trying to find the words to answer you in a civilized way. Aren't you happy for me? I'll tell you this, don't jump headfirst into this relationship. This trip might keep you from graduating. You know what I mean, right? And education is very important. Everything is new to you in this relationship. Everything is new. Everything is new. Everything is exciting. If John loves you, he'll take care of you and let you graduate without jeopardizing your relationship. Don't you agree?" "I think I'm with my mom on this one," Harry said. "Think about your future, my daughter." "I understand, and I'll try not to disappoint you." On December 30, they left. There were many people who wanted to celebrate New Year's Eve in a warm place. The hotel room was bigger than the 3-room apartment of Alice's parents. It was a 5-star hotel, and from the windows of the room they had a magnificent landscape. They met the new year in bathing suits and swimming trunks. Those who have vacationed here not the first time thoughtfully brought tinsel and masks. It was great and fun. At midnight they bathed and wished each other Happy New Year. In the morning they returned to the hotel, and the long-awaited night came, which, as it turned out, was waiting not only for John. She both wanted and dreaded that night. Afraid of not liking the man, afraid of doing something wrong, afraid of everything, until John held her in his arms. He was the first man in her life, and trusting him made her feel far away from that hotel room. Her sensuality was just awakening, and she was giving her lover all of herself and dissolving in him. Now she waited for night every day, waiting for the night to enjoy the man she loved again. She caught herself thinking that she would like to have a child with John, but remembering her mother's words, she told herself, "Not now." It was as if she'd been to heaven on earth. At times like this, time flies fast, and no matter how much you want to go back, you have to. Washington met them with frost and snowfall. Parting, Alice hugged John and thanked him for the New Year's gift. "Darling, do you want to strangle me?" But what a beautiful death it would be, in the arms of a woman. I never said that to anyone. She raised her big eyes to the man, but I'll tell you, you are wonderful, John. You're lovely too. And so they parted, but not for long. Days went by, months went by months. The warm season and their first little anniversary were approaching. They met in the summer. It was raining so hard, with thunder. Nature as if taking a shower, after which she wanted to put on beautiful clothes and shine bright colors. It was in such a rain that John offered her a ride. She gladly dived into his warm mariachi and, baring her teeth, said, "Thank you for not letting me be lost. I'm Alice. I'm a doctor, so it's my duty to save those who need my help." Drove her all the way home and left without even asking for his phone number, and the girl really liked him. A handsome brunette, about 25, older than her and very confident. John had a complicated relationship with the daughter of the hen doctor at his father's clinic, Ariana. She was a very modern girl. She believed that desires should never be restrained, and if you want something, it should not be embarrassed. on the family also had its own views, which she defended and always said that children prefer daddies. At first, John was shocked by such frankness. He would not have been able to, then got used to it, and even some of her bold judgments shared. Their romance grew hotter by the day. The weather was hot, and so was their relationship. They met at her place, but in motels, the places were different, but Ariana was always irresistible. She took her work much more seriously than her relationships with the opposite sex. She was a head nurse with 15 nurses under her command, each of whom knew their duties by heart and performed them professionally, knowing that Ariana was not to be trifled with. Being a strict boss, she believed that in the clinic there was no other way. For this, she was very respected by her father. As a lover, Ariana was very good. Sex for her was a fun adventure, and she always had a lot of fun. John never knew what she would be like today, much less tomorrow. When he thought of her, he always thought of sex, because it was inseparable. But he would never take her as his wife, thinking that married life wasn't for her, too boring. But Ariana longed to have him around. She saw John as a reliable man, a wonderful husband, and maybe even the father of her children. Time passed, but he did not offer anything, and once clarified noisily relations, the woman realized that he did not need him as a wife. He remembered Ariana's face at that moment. It was pale and angry. She looked at him and waited for a direct answer. "I need to hear from you why we are still not married." "I can't marry you." He heard his voice from outside, and he couldn't believe he could say that to her. She looked at him with interest. "May I know why?" He was ready to confess that he did not love her and had never loved her, but that, in his opinion, was too cruel and unfair to her. She was good in looks, and as a lover, she had everything going for her. But he just didn't love her, and that said it all. "We would never be happy." She stared at him, catching every word, then stood up abruptly, said goodbye, and left. She found the strength to quit the next day and take a job at another clinic. She broke up with John immediately and completely. She didn't cut off the tail piece by piece. That was her style. Both parting was not easy, but if there is no future in the relationship, why drag it out? That's when he met Alice, who was the complete opposite of Ariana. The second time he saw her 2 weeks later and also offered her a ride. They met like old friends and chatted the whole way. This time, the new acquaintance asked permission to call, and Alice left her phone number. That's how they began building a relationship that turned a year old in the summer. Alyssa's mom, Megan, asked her daughter to bring John to visit them. Parents should know who their only daughter was dating and spending all her free time with. "Mom, what's this for? Are we getting married? What are you doing? Why can't Dad and I meet the man our daughter likes?" "Because it's still only a man. When he proposes to me, you will become my fiancé. Then I'll bring him to meet. If you meet him now, he won't become a fiancé, given your attitude towards him. So leave her alone. She's saying all the right things." "Thanks, Daddy. You're just in time as always." Daddy wasn't much of a talker. He'd enter into a conversation as a last resort, but he always had the last word. Mom, waving her hand, went to the kitchen, and Alice began to get ready to go to her place to celebrate with her favorite person her small anniversary, a year since the day of their acquaintance. Alice and John's relationship was on an upward trend. They were happy together. The small room became their first home, cozy, warm. It is the merit of Alice, who tried to make her man rush here to her. Joan several times offered to rent another, more comfortable apartment, but Alice did not agree. Here she felt like a mistress, and in the new place that John wanted to rent, she would not have such a feeling. She valued her independence. Their relationship was already in its third year, but she was always waiting for some surprises, troubles, and they never came. She slowly began to calm down and forget about her fears. One day while walking in the park, Alice noticed, "John, do you remember how small these trees were when we walked here for the first time?" "Yes, I remember, and the alley has grown bigger. The trees have grown so big. Look up, the foliage is so thick and the light barely shines through." 2.5 years is a long time. Isn't it too soon to talk about getting married? You're in your last year of college. You'll graduate in a heartbeat. Yes, I agree with you there. But you don't say anything about love. It's as if you don't have the words to express your feelings for me. No, Alice, I take them too seriously. That's why I don't throw them away, or they'll lose their value. It takes a few seconds to say, "I love you," and a lifetime to say, "I love you." That's what I'll do when we're married. He drew her to him and lifted her slightly, their faces facing each other. I love you, darling, and I want to live my whole life with you. I want to have children with you that I'll love. He barely touched her lips, so gently, carefully. I love you too, and I want to live with you all my life, to have children by you whom I will adore. Let's make a deal. As soon as I pass the winter session, we'll go to meet my parents and apply, and after the summer session, we'll celebrate the wedding and go away for a week. What do you think of my plan? It's okay, but I'd move it up 6 months. My parents are wondering how long I've been in a relationship with you, and they want to see this magician who manages to keep me in suspense all this time. He was going to stay at her place tonight, but a call from his mom changed his plans. Alice, I'm sorry, I have to go. There's something at home. I'll go check it out. If it's okay, I'll come back. But there was no coming back. When he entered the apartment, he saw Anna on the floor. She could not get up. Something was with her leg. It was good that the phone was in his pocket, or she would not have been able to call. After fixing her leg with improvised means, her son called an ambulance. She was immediately x-rayed, which showed a fracture, but not of the femoral neck, as John had feared. They gave her a painkiller shot, a cast, and left her in the hospital. We'll keep her for a couple of days, and if she has no fever, we'll let her go. He drove home and only now felt tired. As he drove past a huge shopping center, he saw a girl fighting off 3 teenagers who were trying to take away her bag. The shopping bags were lying on the pavement and she could barely manage them. The tallest one hit her and she fell. He bent down to take the bag off her shoulder, but a man was running towards the girl, who turned out to be Ariana. John, having parked his car, also rushed to her aid. He grabbed the man who had hit the girl by the scruff of the neck and called the police. Ariana had a black eye, was crying, picking up her bags, and asked John to take her home. You don't have a car? Yeah, I took it to the service this morning. I noticed them downtown, so I put the bag over my shoulder so it'd be harder to take it off. And when I came out, they came at me like that. The gang didn't expect that I didn't give up so easily, she said, smiling. After powdering the bruise a little, she put on her glasses. I'll have to wear them for a couple weeks now, the bastards. John drove her home and helped her up to the apartment so that she knew nothing would happen to her. He refused the wine, but had a cup of tea. Well, can I give you my new phone number? Time has passed, we've calmed down, maybe we'll stay friends. And why not? We'll congratulate each other on birthdays, and maybe even the new year. Taking his any red wine with him, Ariana closed the door behind John. He was a good-looking man, she mentally noted, and regretted that she had given up so unforgivably quickly, giving him to some strange woman. John did not go to Alice. After such a busy day, wanted to take a shower and go to bed. But Anna had to stay in the hospital for almost a month. High fever and pressure did not allow her to be discharged home. Her son came to her mother's house in the morning, brought everything she had asked for since the evening, and Victor visited her after work. John didn't see Alice much. He couldn't even spend the night at her place. He had 2 or 3 surgeries a day, which was very exhausting. Sometimes he had to visit his mother in the evening. His father couldn't always make it. One night he got a call from Ariana. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are your bruises? They're not gone yet, but they're going away. Can you give me a ride? No, Ariana, I can't. Why not? We agreed that we're friends, and you can't say no to friends. Sometimes I can. I'm at my mom's in the hospital, so call a cab. And anticipating her question, I said, I won't be back for a while. Say hello to Anna. Let her get well. You take care of yourself too. I'll do my best. Ariana's voice sounded sad. For some reason, she didn't believe John's words about the hospital and called his home phone number. But no one answered. But that didn't convince her either, so she called her father at the hospital. Dad, hello. Do you know what's going on with Victor's wife? She's in the hospital. She fell and broke her leg. Why are you so interested all of a sudden? No, I'm fine, thanks. So it's not that bad. His refusal is not to get rid of her, but to take care of her mother, Ariana thought, raising her hand to stop the cab. Heading home, John decided to call Alice. How are you, my love? Where are you now? I had to work late today. I'm just getting off. I'll pick you up. I missed you. Well, good. I'll be glad to see you too. She was already standing there waiting for him. John got out of the car and hugged Alice. He squeezed her tighter and tighter, wanting to feel her all over. John, people are watching. Let's go to Mary's. How beautiful you are, darling. He leaned down and kissed her. The girl, too, was full of tenderness. She longed for their meetings, which had become quite rare. They talked the whole evening and did not notice how the night crept up. Now, as she slept on his shoulder and he drove her home, he believed that they would have a beautiful family and children. The car stopped outside the driveway and Alice was asleep. He waited a little while and slowly began to wake her up. She opened her eyes, not realizing where she was, but quickly remembered and apologized for falling asleep. "Why don't you stay at my place? It's been so long since we've been together." "Of course, I wanted to stay, but I can see how tired you are. You go ahead. I'll get my stuff out of the car and catch up with you." Taking things from the back seat, he stumbled over a powder bottle, put it in his pocket, thinking it was Alice's. Slamming the car doors shut, he ran to catch up with the girl. "Alice, you left it in the car," John said, holding it out to her. Her look was first surprised, then confused, and then, gathering courage, she asked, "Are you deceiving me?" "In what way?" "Directly. It's not my thing. I can't afford to buy brand-name French cosmetics yet. They don't pay paralegals enough, you know." "Alice, wait. What are you accusing me of?" "Nothing yet. But if you tell me the truth, I'll decide for myself whether or not to charge you with anything." "Tell me." "Come on." "Alice, I don't like your tone. Think about it. If I had another man's woman in my car, would I?" And then he remembered that a few days ago, Ariana was sitting there. "Oh, God, I remembered. My ex-colleague Ariana was sitting there. Sit down, I'll tell you all about it." After listening to his explanation, the girl said, "In our lives, we often have people from the past, former friends or girlfriends." Did not think about why she suddenly appeared. "I think you should not expect anything good from a person who was not around for so long." "No, Alice, it's a coincidence. If I'd gone the other way, I might not have seen her for as long." She nodded, not sure if he really believed what he was saying, although John was very convincing. This time it ended well. Alice lay in his arms and thought she was perfectly happy. He felt good with her too. He enjoyed the smell of her soft body and the sheen of her silky hair. He liked everything about her. "Do you believe me? No more hard feelings?" No, I'm sorry. I was afraid I'd already lost you." "I'm sorry I doubted you. I love you very much, that's all." "I love you too. Let's trust each other." "I agree." It was about 4:00 a.m. when they finally fell asleep. They both didn't hear the alarm clock, jumped up and got dressed in 15 minutes and left the house. A few days later, John received another call from Ariana. "Listen, I didn't leave a powder bottle in your car. I searched everything. Then I remembered that after that incident at the shopping center, I powdered my bruise in the car." "Yeah, I left it in the car. I found it in the backseat. I'm having a hard day today, so come to the clinic by the end of the day. I'll give it back to Marion." When John gave Ariana the powder bottle, he asked her not to leave her things in his car. "Or what?" she asked defiantly. "Because that little thing almost ruined my life." Can you imagine? A powder bottle. After that, I realized how fragile relationships are, how easy it is to break the harmony. All it takes is a bad word or some powder. What am I hearing? Is John really that serious? Is he going to get married? Ariana asked, afraid to hear the answer. Yes, he is. He's met a trustworthy, kind man, and he has no intention of losing her. That's a strong claim. So you've settled down and decided to become a family man. Yes, it's time. Ariana left upset. She couldn't believe Bogdanov was getting married. She wanted to destroy everything in her way, but not to let John realize his plan. Of course, if they were for real, it was unlikely she would be able to destroy those feelings. Sooner or later, she might pay for her own actions. But that wasn't stopping her at the moment. She wanted to see the lucky girl who had managed to seduce such a man. They met at that ill-fated shopping center when John rushed to Ariana's aid. The young people were getting ready for John's birthday. They bought groceries, champagne, and on their way out of the store, they ran into Ariana. What a reunion, Ariana said too loudly. Janushka, happy birthday to you, and she reached out to touch his cheek. Thank you for not forgetting. How could I? Ariana said, clapping him on the shoulder. Glancing at his companion, she saw fear in her eyes. Fear of losing the man she was clinging to so frantically. Fear of being abandoned. Alice saw in this beautiful, bold woman a rival whom, before she had even begun, she was already afraid to fight. She saw her as a confident woman of the highest quality. and Ariana realized that this hen was not worthy of a man like John. This woman will not fight for her happiness, too proud, too jealous, doesn't feel her worth, and therefore also stupid. I'll win this fight, she thought, and grinned wryly. It was good to see you, and waving goodbye, went into the store. Alice was scared, but she didn't show it. Alice, this is the Ariana who left her powder bottle in my car. Yeah, I get it. A very beautiful, confident woman, said the girl with envy in her voice. She acted as if you two were very close at some point. Am I right? And that's where he got cold feet. He could not tell the truth. He realized that his beloved Alice will speculate what and how it was between them, and he, following the proverb, lie to save, answered, no, there was no relationship. We are former colleagues. Our fathers worked together and have been friends for a long time. His voice was calm, affectionate. She smiled and nodded. It was hard for her to speak, to think that what he said wasn't true. She was afraid to imagine her life without John. He sensed that the meeting with Ariana hadn't been good for her, so he offered to go to her place and have dinner with her. But to his surprise, she flatly refused, citing a sudden headache and a desire to be alone. All right, let me. Don't. I'll get there on my own. Don't worry, I'll be fine soon, she replied and stopped the cab. She couldn't sleep, staring at her computer, drinking coffee constantly, and only stopped when she felt her heart jumping out. She found a picture of Ariana at that clinic where John worked. She looked at every feature of her face, and there was nothing to pick on. She was very beautiful. And she couldn't believe John's words that nothing had happened between them. It was hard for her to imagine how she could pass by such a beauty. And the more she looked at her, the worse she felt. She looked awful, with a mournful expression on her face, as if she had buried her nearest and dearest, and a bottomless grief in her eyes. No, I can't do this, she said to herself. This will accomplish nothing. What will be will be. She had to get over the fear of being abandoned. She had once read that life was a game where the rules stated that anything could happen. That's exactly what she meant. And sure, I can get dumped, but I don't have to leave myself, because life doesn't end here. There'll be another John or Carl or whoever, but you have to love yourself and stop worrying so much, because I was scared just by Ariana's look and I hurt John for some reason. After taking a cold shower, she came to herself, put on a warm robe, and as soon as her head touched the pillow, she fell asleep. Alice was approaching the winter session, and with it John's birthday. She was even afraid to admit to herself that she was more afraid of meeting his parents than of exams. So, tomorrow John would turn 27, a man in the prime of his life. He's handsome, he's a great professional, and I think he loves me. Again this insecurity mentally scolded herself, Alice. She bought him a medal as a gift, on which engraved the words, "The best plastic surgeon of all time." Well, it's a joke gift, decided the girl. She also bought him a player for listening to music while jogging. All this was beautifully packaged, and at the appointed time, she rang the doorbell. Victor opened the door. "Are you Alice?" he asked, very friendly. "Yes, I am." The girl smiled strangely. "John gave us such a picture of you that it would be silly not to recognize you. Let me help you take off your coat. Come on in." She went into the living room, where a large, beautiful table was set. She noted to herself that there were more guests than she'd expected. "Hello, darling," John said loudly, which made her wince. "John, darling, I wish you a happy birthday. I love you," and handed her a box wrapped in shiny paper. The celebrant immediately opened it and laughed for a long time at the medal, immediately put it on himself, and showed everyone what he had achieved at work and how he was valued. The player was also to his liking. When everyone sat down at the table, the atmosphere lightened up a bit. Everyone joked and made toasts. Anna kept looking at the girl with an appraising look, then transferred her eyes to her son, who sat next to her, and lowered her dissatisfied gaze to her plate. When it was Alice's turn to make a toast, she was very nervous, but she started cheerfully. At that time, the doorbell rang. "Mom, I didn't invite anyone else." "Who is it?" "I think it's the Stones. How could I not invite them to a family reunion? I mean, we're practically related." The hallway became noisy with hugs and kisses. "Son, go meet the guests," Mom shouted. "Alice, I'm sorry, I'll be right back." In the hallway, he saw the entire Stoner family, including Ariana. Alice was sitting alone at the table and felt unwanted by anyone, as if she wanted to be in her room and not see or hear anyone. At that time, the guest entered the room. When everyone was seated, John introduced Alice as his girlfriend. Mom grimaced, and only Dad smiled and began to fill the glasses with champagne. Alice's toast was safely forgotten, and they began to listen to the toasts of the guests. Ariana was the first to stand up. She had obviously prepared for the toast, and the gift she gave was with a big hint. The toast was great, with humor and wishes for happiness. She handed the birthday boy a small box containing a keychain in the shape of a Hippocratic bowl. It was quite an expensive thing, made of silver, which was confirmed by the hallmark on the back of the gift. "Where are your keys?" Ariana asked. "Look, not now," John said with irritation in his voice. "No, right now," and she went into the hallway. "Are these yours?" His, Ariana answered Anna. She quickly connected the keychain with John's keys, and only then she calmed down. A psychic friend had advised her to make such a gift. If you want to bind a man to yourself, then give him a keychain like yours. Identical trinkets will constantly keep two people in an energetic connection. She liked the idea, and when she saw a keychain that matched John's, she thought it was fate. Ariana went ahead and, to finish Alice off, asked John to dance. "Let's go and reminisce about our youth," Ariana said with a laugh. "I'm sorry, Ariana, but Alice asked me at the beginning of the evening, so I can't. There are so many gentlemen, you can invite anyone," and he pointed at the fathers, who were still so hot. "Son, dance with Ariana, your girlfriend won't be offended." "Mom, let me decide," and turned to Alice and asked her to dance. But she didn't want to dance, saying that it's not nice to refuse a girl. John sat like a spitfire. Ariana waited for him to get up, and the man waited for Alice, who shook her head, refusing him. When he got up and went to dance with Ariana, everyone clapped. "What a beautiful couple." John's mom couldn't resist. "Yes, Anna, you're right," echoed Ariana's mom. While John danced, Alice got up and went into the hallway to get dressed. She had nothing else to do in this house. No one came out to see her, so she quietly closed the door and quickly ran down the stairs to the bottom. Tears rolled from her eyes down her cheeks along with her mascara. A cab stood outside the house as if waiting for her. Naming the address, she continued to cry. The roads were clear, and in 15 minutes she was home. Her clothes were lying on the floor. She stood under the shower and didn't hear John calling at her door, then pounding on the door with his fist. She came out an hour later, completely exhausted, lay down and lay there until morning with her eyes open. No sooner had Alice put the kettle on to make coffee than the doorbell rang. She looked at the clock. It was not yet 8 o'clock. When she opened the door, she saw a tired man with a faded look. "And what was that yesterday?" he immediately asked, leaning against the jamb. "Good morning to you too, come in." "I'm not having a good morning. Can you explain to me what happened yesterday?" "What happened yesterday?" "Nothing, I guess. I just realized that I was an extra and left. Did anyone notice I was gone?" "Alice, you're acting like a child. Small, mean, petulant, resentful. I told you to spend the day together and get to know each other another day. You can't mix two events like that. One is fun, the other is serious, where there's no room for strangers. You wanted something different. Well, it is what it is. The Stones are old friends. Ariana's their daughter, and even though they weren't invited, they had a right to come. Do you understand?" "Of course I understand. I also understand something else, that Ariana is infatuated with you and will stop at nothing. I can't handle her. Do you understand that?" "You don't have to handle her. My dear girl, I had 1,000 opportunities to marry that pretty girl. But I never took them because I never loved her. I loved you. Why did you come after me when I left? If you say you love me." "I didn't notice at first, and when I asked where you were, Mom said she'd gone to powder her nose. I waited about 5 minutes, then I looked in the room and it was empty. I apologized to the guests and went to your place. I rang the bell and knocked, but you didn't answer. You came here?" "Yes, I did." After that, Alice felt better and even a little ashamed of yesterday. She had really acted like a rude person, abandoning a man on his birthday and showing the guests that he meant nothing to her. It's bad and, above all, untrue. She loved him and was terribly jealous, even though the man never gave her a reason. "I'm sorry. Yes, I did a bad thing, but no one paid attention to me. They wouldn't even listen to my toast." "Alice, but it was my birthday. That's why they were paying attention to me. You noticed they gave you presents too." Wasn't my attention enough for you? You're a child, you should grow up. Did you like Ariana's present? Yeah, it was great. It's very original. But yours was just as good. Everyone tried your metal on and said it was a great idea. It's a pity you didn't see it. They were drinking coffee and she was crying quietly. He put his arm around her and gently wiped away her tears. She put her hand on his shoulder and said, I'm sorry. I spoiled your holiday. But I was so confused. You dancing with such a beautiful woman and your mother admiring you so much. I felt superfluous. I'm sorry, darling. Who told me it was okay to say no to girls? Who didn't want to go dancing with me? That girl Alice. You understand, I can't even imagine that you're not with me, that you're not making coffee for me and lying on my shoulder. Alice, I love you. You and I agreed to trust each other, aunts. I remember, but Ariana is so unpredictable and beautiful. You're beautiful too, very beautiful. And forget about Ariana. So your mom didn't like me? I thought when she looked at me, she felt sorry for her son, that such a handsome boy got such a me. Look, this isn't funny anymore. You're a broken record. Why is your self-esteem so low? You're smart, you're beautiful, I adore you. That's when John's cell phone started ringing. John, didn't you forget you got a surgery in 40 minutes? No, Nanachka, I'm on my way. Why are your eyes so wide open? The man asked Alice. This is my nurse, reminded about the operation, and stop flinching at every call. Okay, have a nice day. After work, I'll come over to your place. What can I buy you? Buy some good wine, I'll cook the meat. She didn't want to let him go, but she felt that he was no longer with her, but out there with his patients. So she let go of the best plastic surgeon of all time. When John rang the doorbell, Alice had everything ready. She wanted to make it up to her lover, so she decided that it would be not just a dinner, but a beautiful romantic dinner. All its attributes were on her face. She favored white. Rose petals on the white tablecloth looked even brighter, and tall candlesticks with twisted candles decorated the table. She wanted John to relax, rest after work, and plunge into the warm atmosphere she was preparing for him. When she opened the door, she didn't see John behind the huge bouquet and packages with which he literally piled into the apartment. How beautiful you are! Today more than ever. Taking the bouquet from John's hands, she placed it in a vase on the edge of the table, as if to complete the table setting. Today was her day. The meat was excellent, she looked beautiful, and the atmosphere she had created was one of love. How good I feel with you, said Alice. I don't want this evening to end. If it were possible to make it so that only you and I were in the whole world. No Ariana or Manachka or anyone else. We'd be fine. Alice, what do you care about Ariana? Forget about her like she never existed. I envy her assertive nature. It's more suited to a man than a fragile and beautiful woman like her. That's what you're wrong. She has her mom's personality. She's a very determined woman, and Ariana's like her. Veronica, Ariana's mom likes to tell how she married Pavel Ivanovich. Really? Did she? He doesn't like to tell the story, but Veronica loves it. I think she's adding things to the story that didn't really happen. But I know that Uncle Dustin liked Veronica and her girlfriend. The three of them always went out together. But one day, Veronica overheard Dustin talking to a friend, sharing that he liked both girls and couldn't decide which one to choose. When Veronica heard this, she realized this was her chance. On Saturday morning, she came to him, told him to take his passport, and dragged him to the registry office. He did not resist, and even was pleased that finally it will be put to an end. A friend, when she found out, was very upset, and at the wedding to them did not come, and after graduating from the institute left the city. She was never seen again. That's how her parents' passions boiled over. That's an interesting story. Ariana, knowing this story, will follow in her mom's footsteps. I can't listen to this anymore. He stood up, pretending to leave. Isn't there anything else to talk about but Ariana? Well, sit down, calm down. I won't talk about her anymore. The rest of the evening passed quietly. They danced, confessed their love to each other, and dreamed of their life after the wedding. They decided that they would hardly live in luxury, but they would be well provided for. John had promised to take care of that. They would never have to worry about tomorrow, or worse, think about how to make ends meet. A man, as the head of the household, will try to make his family's life prosperous. Alice's evening was wonderful. Even in the dream, it continued. They agreed to go to the registry office tomorrow. John offered to go to Alice's parents first and then to the registry office, but the girl insisted on her own, knowing how her mother feels about John. All the next day, Alice looked at the clock, but the hands were frozen in place and did not want to move to 3 o'clock, the time when John would be waiting for her at the clinic to go to the registry office. She even put the clock to her ear, checking whether it was running or not. The watch was in good working order and the time was correct. She was just nervous, and she could understand it. It wasn't every day you applied for a job. The cab took her to the clinic very quickly. Looking at the time, she realized that she had arrived half an hour early. She wanted to get out of the car and walk around, but she saw Ariana and John coming out of the clinic. She closed the doors and asked the cab driver to wait a little longer and reassured him that she would pay for the downtime. She was pounding so badly that the driver turned on the heater when he heard her teeth chattering. She saw Ariana trying to hug John, and he pulled her arms away and said something to her. She wanted so badly to hear what this woman was talking about so emotionally. "John, let's talk like adults. You don't pick up the phone when I call you. You refuse to go out for a cup of coffee. You've forgotten that we're friends and friends should see each other once in a while. Do you agree with me?" "I do, as long as it doesn't interfere with personal plans. You don't want to hear anything when I tell you I'm going to see Alice. Tell me what you see in that plucked chicken." "Don't you talk about my future wife like that," John said loudly and grabbed her by the shoulders. Alice clenched her eyes shut and was afraid to open them. "Why are you sitting there?" the cab driver asked her. "Are they kissing?" Without opening her eyes, the girl asked. The cab driver looked at Alice and realized that she was afraid to look at all this. "No, they're hugging. I can't look at this anymore. Take me home." John was actually pulling away from Ariana's hands and trying to leave, but she was trying to stop him. "Ariana, leave me alone. Don't make me talk to you rudely. You've meant nothing to me for a long time." Everything, and he pushed her away. "Then I'll tell your chicken about our hot nights. She's probably never dreamed of anything like this. Please go ahead. I don't know what you'll get out of it. I'm not coming back to you anyway." He looked at the time. Alice should have been here by now, but she was late. The call from John made her flinch. She hesitated for a long time whether to answer or not, but her hands were shaking so much that she disconnected the call. "Maybe you overreacted, deciding to leave so soon. We should have talked." "What's there to talk about? It's clear enough." "From what I saw, nothing was clear to me," the cabbie said. "Man, they'd be happy. All the way home." She sat staring at one point. The cab driver, a man in his 50s, looked at her in the mirror and finally couldn't take it anymore. "I'm sorry, but did you do the wrong thing? I have 2 daughters myself, and I would not approve of such behavior. Why did you come out? It was obvious that the guy didn't like it with this girl. Maybe he was waiting for you to come to his aid, and you cowardly ran away from the battlefield. You don't know anything. She loves him and she's pursuing him by any means possible. Why should I get in the way? Let her pursue him. It's who he loves that counts. You know, I like that woman better than you. Fighting for her place in the sun, and you? Snot on your fist. You're beautiful. You need to be confident. No, what you did was wrong. Let him come back if he loves you. It's not the first time you've jumped up. He'll get tired of it. Let him. I won't be lost without him. That's a good attitude, but you love him, don't you? And the guy's handsome. He's a doctor. Yeah, he's a plastic surgeon. Makes women beautiful. You see how many women are around, and he loves you. You should appreciate that. Why don't we go back? No, I don't want to see him. The car stopped at the entrance, and the girl asked to wait for 10 minutes. She quickly packed a huge suitcase with her things, removed the photos from the walls, took her favorite knickknacks. She once again looked around the room where she was so happy with John and closed the door of the apartment, knocked on the neighbor. Catherine, here are the keys. Give them to my landlady. Here's the money for the whole month. Tell her I've vacated the apartment. Why are you so suddenly out of your seat? Where are you going? To my mom's for now, I guess, and then we'll see. Goodbye. She loaded everything into Mary's car and gave her parents' address. John, not understanding anything, waited for Alice for another 20 minutes and went to her house. Called, knocked, until a neighbor came out and said that Alice no longer lives here. What do you mean? She doesn't live here anymore. Where is she now? I have no idea. She packed up and left in a cab in 15 minutes. I don't understand. Yesterday I was in one mood, today I'm in another. I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself. He went outside in total confusion. The man was a little tired of Alice's antics, But his love for this girl made him forgive. If she had moved out so suddenly, it meant that she had not had time to find another apartment, which meant that she could only go to her parents. Quickly getting into Maria's car, he stopped already in front of a familiar house. Passing the cab, which was pulling away from the entrance, he began to remember the number of the apartment, but remembered only the floor. "I'll have to wait for someone to get in or out, or I won't be able to get in," John reasoned. He sat down at the entrance and waited. His head hurt and his mood was low. Ariana was just boring the hell out of him. Turns out she had called him all night yesterday, but he was so happy with Alice that he hadn't heard any calls. That's why she made this spectacle of herself today. The door to the entryway opened abruptly and kids spilled out. He went up to the right floor and immediately remembered the apartment. No one answered the door for a long time, and he was about to leave when the door opened and Alice's mom, Megan, appeared before him in all her glory. "Young man, haven't they taught you any manners? If they don't open the door after 3 tries, they don't want to see you. Didn't you know that?" "Of course I knew that, but I'm not in the mood for sentimentality right now. Could you get Alice for me, please?" The woman made a surprised face. Her neatly plucked eyebrows went up, and she confidently answered that her daughter had not lived with them for a long time and gave the address of her rented apartment. "I've been there. The neighbor told me that she's moved out, and she has nowhere else to go but you. I see you're good with analytics, but we don't have it. Is there anything I can give her later?" John stared into the woman's eyes, almost believing her, apologized and asked that Alice call him. "I will definitely tell her, and if she wants to, of course she'll call," and slammed the door loudly. Alice heard the whole conversation between her mother and John, but never dared to go out. She thought it was his fault that Ariana was letting herself do this. If he answered her seriously, maybe even rudely, she would definitely back off. John drove home and thought about Alice. She was different from all the women he'd had before her. They were always ready to get into bed with him at will, just to stay among his girlfriends. To befriend a plastic surgeon was prestigious. But Alice was not the same. Her naivety, honesty, and keen sense of justice appealed to him. Maybe they were both wrong. He couldn't get over the reason why she hadn't come to the registry office. She couldn't have fallen out of love with him and changed her mind in a matter of hours. His anxiety was transmitted to the girl. She, too, was questioning the way she had acted. She was hurt that even the cabbie liked Ariana better. But at times like this, you forget everything you've heard, try to run away from your problems, bury your head in the sand, and behave foolishly, and when you're angry and frightened, you make one mistake after another. John tried to call her several times, but to no avail. She had thrown away her SIM card on the way to her parents' house, so she wouldn't hear his voice. John didn't give up hope of finding Alice. If she didn't want to see him again, he wouldn't oppose. But he wanted to know what had happened in the 5 hours they hadn't seen each other. Why had the girl's mood changed so abruptly to decide such a serious matter as marriage? There must be very good reasons for this. He wanted to know only them. The first thing he did was to go to Alice at work, where he learned that she had quit yesterday suddenly and asked permission not to work for 2 weeks, and in her application she wrote, "for family reasons." He spent the whole evening at home looking at the ceiling and wondering what he should do next. Ariana came to support him. When he could hardly tear his eyes away from the ceiling, as from a beautiful painting, he looked at the girl. "I'm begging you, go away or I'll push you out of here. Come on, we're going to the coolest club in the world. It's gonna be a hell of a program. I'm staying home." "No, honey, that's not possible. They're waiting for us there. Tell everyone I have a headache or I'm dying." He smiled strainedly and asked her to leave. "I'll come to you tomorrow, however you want me to." The next day, he still had to go with Ariana to a mutual friend's anniversary party. He felt awful. He didn't know when it would all end, because they just wouldn't let him go before. It was like a detention where he had to smile and drink champagne, even though he would have gladly had a glass of pure water. He longed for Christine surrounded by these people who were strangers to him. How can you be bored when so many people want to cheer you up? "I'm sorry, I'm not ready to party. I want to be alone to clear my head. Don't hold me back. Thank you for your efforts, but don't come to my place again." But she wouldn't even listen to him, much less understand. "You shouldn't be alone right now. Don't bother me. I'll decide what to do." And he left that house he hated. She didn't have time to get into his Mariana. He drove off before she could open the car door. Ariana was furious at his behavior, but there was nothing she could do. She had a relationship with Anna, But even that support from her mom couldn't help Ariana get the man's attention. "I'm sorry," she replied to his mom. "I can't help you anymore. He seems to really love her and I'm powerless, even with my pressure." "What am I hearing? Are you giving up?" "No way." "Yeah, that's it. I realized I missed my chance and I shouldn't bother him anymore. I'm truly sorry, girl. I wanted you to be a part of our family." "I know, Anna, but apparently your wishes and mine aren't enough." John could only do one operation a day. His father did the rest, though it was hard for him to stand at the operating table for 2 hours at a time. "Son, I can't take this much longer. My back hurts, so get out of your depression and get to work." "I got it, Dad. Everything's gonna be okay." One day, he finally saw her. Alice had her back to him, but even at that distance, he still recognized her. His heart was beating so fast, he was ready to jump out of his chest. He was ready to run to her and hug her tightly and not let her go anywhere else. But the running was like a slow-motion movie, and the more he tried, the slower he got. He was getting close. She was so beautiful. Alice turned around, smiled her smile, and he woke up. Even though it was a dream, he was still happy that he had seen her that way. He thought about who could help him in his search for Alice and remembered his school friend, with whom they ran away from classes together and played on the same soccer team. Only now, Steve had his own detective agency. Quickly dialing his number, he offered to meet and talk. After hearing his friend's story, Steve promised to help, and the next day he took on the case. A week later, he was able to report to John that Alice was out of town. He suggested waiting a couple of weeks. Maybe she had gone on vacation. Then he would be able to say exactly where she was. Meanwhile, he went to the institute, where he learned very interesting details. It turned out that Alice transferred to a branch of the law university. Steve found out in which city it is located and went there. Documents she really turned in, but where she lives, no one knew. At the police station, after showing the documents, he asked for help. He was promised help and went home with a light heart. A week later, a policeman called Steve and said that Alice had registered at her aunt's house, but did not live there. That aunt doesn't know where she is. "What aunt?" John said in surprise. "She never told us about her." "Well, let's wait until the last session at the institute. She'll definitely come there and we can talk to her. But for now, I'll be patient. I've lost my job. I've blamed everything on my dad. I've got to stop suffering." "I like your attitude. And remember, everything will come true if you don't want it to. The words of the great Renevskaya. You can trust her." "Got it." He's been tormented by his parents, saying that it's high time to come to his senses and start looking for a good girl because he's about to turn 28. "You don't think it's that easy, darling. You've had so many of them, and only this gray mouse caught your eye. You should give Ariana another chance. She loves you so much." "I don't love her, and I never have," John said angrily. "How long can you chase a ghost, this illusory happiness? You mustn't go into a panic, as if your favorite toy had been taken away from you, and you become a weak boy without it. And they also say that women are weaker than men. Now I see that it's men who have a harder and more painful time breaking up with girls. I don't like you like that at all. It's time to get back to life." He himself understood everything and tried to occupy himself with work, not to think about Alice. And it was saving him. John's life was getting better. He was surrounded by so many women he hadn't really noticed before. The news that the handsome John became free quickly traveled all those who wanted to comfort such a man. But he was not ready for a new relationship, not having completed the old one. The man did not give up trying to find Alice and talk. But days and months passed. To remember her features, he closed his eyes and remembered their meetings, walks, their nights. It was all so fresh in his memory. For the entire next 6 months, he wandered the streets alone, especially the places where they had been together. Toward the beginning of the last session, John drove himself to a branch of the law school, but what he heard killed him. Alice had passed early. And the diploma? Did she get her diploma? No, but she had her diploma notarized by her aunt, Victoria. Did I answer your question? Yes, thank you. Like a trained detective, she anticipated his moves and was proactive. She's running away from him as if he'd done something irreparable, and she doesn't want to see him. Well, then he'll end his search and start his life over, but without Alice. He felt how tired he was of all these searches, of waiting for something that would help him relieve the guilt of their separation. A year passed. John was still alone, but his heart did not beat so often at the memories of a year ago. Alice was no easier. She was staying with her aunt, her father's sister. She was a quiet, kind woman who had buried her husband long ago and lived alone in her two-room apartment. The arrival of her niece made Victoria very happy. She hoped that her arrival would distract her from her gloomy thoughts. When her niece told her that she was pregnant, she took care of her like a fragile crystal vase. Alice learned that she was not alone a month after her escape from John. It was on that romantic night. Fate had decided so, apparently, knowing in advance that this night would be the last. Her conscience tormented her, because it was John's child and he, as a father, had a right to know about it. But Megan insisted on an abortion. "You don't want this baby, have an abortion. You're still young enough to have children." The situation was saved, as always, by Harry. He rarely interfered in the conversation between mother and daughter, only in exceptional cases. This conversation he did not like, and the word abortion, in general, a terrible word, and he opened the door of the daughter's room sharply and said loudly, "When will this end? How long are you going to dictate what this grown woman should do? How do you know if she wants this child or not? What right do you have to push her to kill a child? I'm a mother and I know what my child needs. A child may be better, but not a grown woman who decided to become a mother so that I'll never hear that dreaded word abortion again. And you, my daughter, if you want to carry this child and it's dear to you, go to Victoria. You'll be at ease there. She'll look after you and help you with everything. I see that some people here have taken on the role of a doomsayer." He glared angrily at his wife. Megan pressed her thin lips together, but she wanted her word to be the last. "Think about it. A mother would never wish ill. Or do you still love him and want to have a child of that miracle surgeon's reproach in front of your eyes for the rest of your life?" "Yes, I love him and I'll always love him, but he doesn't need me. I'm not ready for such a man. I will go to my aunt. I love her very much," Alice cried and said. On his 28th birthday, John left the city not to receive guests and congratulations. He didn't want to hear the same words spoken year after year. Anna, of course, was upset. She wanted to gather in a large company, to talk, to see her son happy. But it was not destined to come true. The son was adamant. He, in general, after the breakup of relations with Alice, became tougher, and she even seemed rude. The mother thought it was the cost of the unwanted friendship her son had made. Alice couldn't deny herself the urge to wish John a happy birthday. The message was short. She wished him happiness. Looking at the text message, he realized it was Alice, but the number was undetectable. He noticed that he didn't get excited. His heart didn't pound like before. Time had done its work. They were becoming strangers. He didn't even realize that he had become the father of a beautiful daughter, whom her mother had named Anna. Anna, it sounded beautiful, melodic, she thought. Aunt Coraline was her helper in everything. What would she do without her? John was slowly getting over his failed relationship with Alice, and she was getting herself worked up and wondering if she had done the right thing a year ago and answering it herself. Of course it was right. It is necessary to calm down and live on. The young mother talked to herself, taking small sips of tea. 2 more years later, John got married. He was already 30, and he realized that if he didn't marry for a couple more years, he would never marry and his mother would never have grandchildren. The girl, who was 5 years younger than him and named Martha, was pretty. She worked as an instructor at a fitness center, and they met at a cafe where she stopped for a snack. John sat down at her table, and that's how their acquaintance began. Anna didn't like her. "Why you always find the wrong women?" "I like her. She loves me. She's smart. She's pretty. She takes care of me. That's all I need. She makes me feel at ease. She loves him. How can someone so handsome not love you? And you? Do you love her? Or don't you care who you marry? What are you talking about? How can it be indifferent? I choose a wife for life." "That's right, for life. Will you put up with a smart, pretty one for life? Or is that not enough for married life?" "Mom, it's okay. We've been holding hands for a year and a half. How long?" "They're holding hands. I know how young girls today have pens. She's not pregnant." "Not yet, but we're working on it." "Now you're talking about holding hands." He laughed at his perceptive mother and was surprised at his own laughter. It had been a long time since he laughed so heartily. The wedding was beautiful. The bride in her lace gown, no other than couture, was marvelous. The whole female half of the fitness center envied Martha and did not understand what this handsome plastic surgeon found in this Martha. A small butt and breasts, so bad, but the face smarmy. That's all her virtues. She's a bit of a roughneck. but somehow she became John's wife. Alice found out about John's wedding on the internet. That's it. She scrutinized Martha's features, looked at her gorgeous dress, but most of all, she looked at John. "So Anna, your dad got married." "Yes, he did." "Well, you and I are fine together, aren't we? You're my beautiful girl." That night, she couldn't sleep a wink. She kept picturing John and that Martha together. Then she imagined herself in a white dress next to John. She didn't fall asleep until morning. The only question on her mind was, why not Ariana? She had run away from him so that John would be happy with her. What could have happened? Alice thought, was John really telling her the truth when he convinced her that he had never loved Ariana? She covered her face with the palms of her hands, but she didn't cry. What if my sacrifices were in vain and no one wanted me? After the wedding, the young couple traveled to Europe. That's where they spent their honeymoon week. Martha immediately said she didn't want children yet. "I just started to live, so I should give birth and stay at home with diapers and cradles." "No, I don't want to do that, and don't let your mom tell me what I should and shouldn't do all the time." John noted to himself that his wife was no Alice. He even before the wedding bought an apartment and managed to make repairs there, but it was empty and uncomfortable. Therefore, after a week's vacation, the young couple had one more pleasant event, moving into a new dwelling. It was a large and bright apartment, as on the 20th floor. Martha had never had her own place. She was traveling on rented apartments, and now such a luxury. But a pleasant hassle it is to buy furniture, curtains, dishes, but also to live through the first mismatch of tastes. With Martha's temperament, it was bound to be as she would say, but John stopped her at once. "I like that you're zealous in your endeavor. But don't forget, I'm going to live there too, and you'll have to consider my wishes too." He said it quietly, but so plainly that Martha was afraid that their married life might end before it began. "You're right, darling. I got a little carried away and quickly smoothed over my spouse's conflict. It's good that you understood everything, because I don't like to repeat myself twice." She looked at her husband and thought that he is not as simple as it may seem at first glance. It was evening. John and his wife sat on the loggia and looked at the first appearing stars in the huge city. They could see everything from the 20th floor. Cars whizzed by and people seemed so small. It was as if the city was waking up after a hot day. The coolness invited everyone to relax and enjoy the beautiful evening. "What a nice breeze is blowing," Martha said, sipping her glass of red wine. "It's a wonderful summer this year." John replied, "What did you do all day today?" He asked his wife, who had given up work and was all about herself. "In the morning I went to the girls to the fitness center, then went to the hairdresser, went shopping and was so tired that I decided to take a bath and relax. Maybe we could go out. A club, maybe, and listen to some music. Our lives are so boring." "I'm not bored at all. I had 3 surgeries today. I've been at the table for 6 hours. That's why I don't feel like going to any club." "You're just saying that to rub my nose in the fact that I don't work and I'm living off you?" "Not at all. I asked you not to work. You said yes, so be my guest. But you and I must understand that I'm not sitting in the clinic. I'm working, and I'm working hard. So don't take offense. If I don't work, we won't have the standard of living we're used to. You don't have to work. The clinic is yours. Hire 1 or 2 more surgeons, and you and I will vacation abroad." John looked at his wife and thought how bored he was with her, but he said aloud, "I'll think about your proposal. I'll lie down in my office tonight." "Yes, please. You're used to sleeping with me. If your mom knew that, she wouldn't be asking me about grandchildren all the time. He's too tired to make love to her." "You think I don't know you're on birth control pills? Who are you kidding? I want a family. I'm 35, you're 30. Mature enough to have kids. 5 years of married life was long enough for you to enjoy life for yourself and have a baby." "Maybe it's not my fault we can't make it work," Martha said resentfully. "Are you saying I'm infertile? Well, let's get tested together. I don't see anything wrong with that. Tomorrow I'll wait for you at my clinic. We'll take all the tests required to answer this question. I'll do it myself at the women's clinic." "No, you will come to my clinic. Got it?" "Got it." She already regretted saying it, but it's the same thing. "Why don't we go together tomorrow? You'll get up at 7:00 a.m. "I'll be up, don't worry," and she went into the bedroom. And John lay on the couch in his office and wondered why he lived. Work, 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 home and work again. Money, money. The house means this, The house needs that. Everything is necessary and necessary. He doesn't want anything more. He's very tired. Maybe it would be really worth it if we could get at least one surgeon. He should consult his father, was the last thought that flashed through his mind before he fell into a deep sleep. Martha didn't get up at 7 o'clock, and he didn't want to wake her. Writing her a note to wait for her at the clinic, he quickly ran down the stairs, and with a squeal of tires, his car sped off. Martha didn't wake up until 9 o'clock. It took her only an hour to take the test. She was in such a hurry that she was late for work, but all she wanted to do was to get to the store where she had put aside a beautiful cloth yesterday. Today she had not forgotten her card, to which her husband transferred a tidy sum every month. Meanwhile, not far from John, his beautiful daughter was growing up. Alice was still alone. No, of course, she had men and felt that she liked, but as soon as it came to bed, she could not overcome herself. Nausea came to her throat, and she could not do anything about it. After several attempts, she left this idea to arrange a personal life. For the first time, she admitted to herself that John was her man, and it was only with him that she had known love and was at the pinnacle of bliss. Time was passing, and with it her beauty and youth. She decided that she would devote her life to her daughter and do everything to make her Anna happy for her and for herself. The older the girl grew, the more she looked like her father. Only her eyes were her mother's, but she looked just like John. At the age of 7, Anna asked for the first time where her daddy was. Alice had been waiting for this question for a long time and prepared for it. She decided not to turn the child against her father, and he really wasn't guilty of anything. For the first time after the question was asked, she showed his picture. "What a handsome daddy I have." With delight said the girl, "And you mommy is also very handsome, so I'll be beautiful too." "Yes, you are already beautiful," said the happy mom proudly. "Tell me about daddy," the daughter began to ask more and more often. "Your daddy is a very talented plastic surgeon." "What does that mean?" "It means he makes people beautiful. He's a very kind, decent man." "Mommy, if daddy's so good, why aren't you together?" "Here, my daughter, I have to tell you, a lot of it is my fault. When you grow up a little, I'll tell you everything." "Okay, mommy, but don't cry, okay?" "Okay, my dear, I won't." As soon as her daughter fell asleep, Alice took the laptop into the kitchen, went on social networks, and found out the latest news about the best man in the world. The test showed that John was fine, but Martha was having problems. The doctor wanted to talk to John's wife first. Seeing the fear in her eyes, the doctor reassured her. "Martha, your test results are here, so we'll have to talk to you for a while to get the whole picture. The only thing you have to do is answer my questions truthfully. Do we have a deal?" She could only nod. "Let me take a look at you first, right over here on the screen." When the examination was over, Catherine asked, "Have you had many abortions?" Martha was silent and looked at the doctor with frightened eyes. "I see. How long have you been taking birth control pills?" "Not long, a year or so." "Martha, we had an agreement, really. I can see everything in the test. You're ruining yourself. The least you've been on the pill is 5 or 6 years. First abortions, then the pill. And you want to get pregnant after all that. The pills you've been on for so long have caused atrophy. These drugs have created an artificial monthly cycle in your body and suppressed the normal natural cycle. I will not load you with various terms. I will only say that as a result of long-term use of these drugs, you stop the growth and development of female germ cells. Did your doctor prescribe the pills, or are we our own doctors?" The woman said with her head down, "My friend brought me from abroad. Very good pills. Never once failed me. I think they have. You can't get pregnant. You, as an adult woman, should know that you should choose pills only on the recommendation of a gynecologist, not on your own desire. When did you become sexually active?" "When I was 17. "And when did you have your first abortion?" 19. "Is there anything I can do to help, or have I already messed up?" "I need to recover." And she told me in detail what to do and how to do it. "You're still young. Your husband is healthy and strong. You'll be fine." With the pills, she gave her a day-by-day, hour-by-hour schedule, and she asked her to go to some of the treatments. "I ask you, not as a doctor, but as a woman, don't tell my husband about my early abortions and their number. He doesn't need to know, does he? It won't help me get pregnant, but rather the opposite. Can I count on you?" And she looked at the doctor with the eyes of a beaten dog. "You can," the doctor replied with some squeamishness. At the end of the day, John came in to see her. "What's the matter with my wife?" Trying to be cheerful, asked the man. "Do you need treatment, John?" From what he asked seriously. From prolonged use of birth control pills. You're a doctor yourself and you realize that it doesn't go without consequences. There, you've probably had abortions too, haven't you? "John, darling, why do you need to know that?" And she reassured him with the patient's words, "It won't help her get pregnant." "I get it. Thank you, Catherine." Martha took a cab and quickly drove home. She cooked dinner as John liked, set the table nicely, and like a good wife, waited for her husband. He was in no hurry to get home. He decided to walk along the embankment, to breathe the air used so rarely in nature. Sitting on a bench and exposing his face to the sun, he thought about his wife. So Martha had a number of abortions and had been on birth control for a long time. Mom was right this time. I picked the wrong woman. I'll come home later. Let her go to bed. I don't feel like seeing her tonight. And Martha realized that the throne beneath her was wobbling. The doctor must have told her husband about her turbulent youth, but she didn't want to say goodbye to everything around her. If John didn't want to see his wife, Martha was afraid to look her in the eye and hear that they were getting a divorce, afraid to go back to the rented apartment and live from paycheck to paycheck. And she would never find such a handsome man again. She quickly extinguished the candles, changed her clothes, and went to the bedroom. Martha thought to herself and closed the bedroom door tightly. John entered the apartment well past midnight. He was happy that Martha hadn't waited for him. It was too late for dinner, so after a glass of water and a shower, he went to bed and fell asleep. Martha heard John come in, but she didn't come out. She didn't seem to be breathing at all. She had never been so afraid of breaking up with a man. It wasn't even the man, but what the man had that she wasn't likely to get in a divorce. Her soul grew cold as she thought back to her life 5 years ago. The money at the fitness center was more than modest, and Martha's needs didn't match her financial possibilities. She wanted to rent a better apartment and dress and rest, and how to get married without all this. She should know how much effort it takes to please a man. Outwardly, she was attractive. Taut figure, small stature, black as tar hair, always styled and groomed. She knew how to make an impression. Even with her temperament, she had not managed to pull John under her. He immediately defined the boundaries of permissible. When they had just moved in, and she was enthusiastically sorting out the suitcases, she came across a photo album. Looking through with interest, she saw quite a few photos of Alice. Gathering them up, she asked in her hostess voice who it was and what these photos were doing in their house. "And what are you so confused?" calmly asked John. "This is a good friend of mine." "That's it? Just an acquaintance?" "You don't need to know the details. It was before you, and it doesn't matter now." "Then why are they here if they don't matter? Can you answer me?" "I've already answered everything. Do I have to account for my whole life before you? When you married me, did you think I'd sit around for 30 years waiting for you? That's very presumptuous." "No, of course I didn't think that, but keeping a scrapbook of your exes is also rude to your wife. Those pictures are in my album, not the family album. Put them back where they belong and calm down. They'll stay there as long as I want them to." And she realized that she shouldn't talk to him in a raised tone and pry into his private life, even if it was his past. It seemed to her that he didn't value their relationship very much, and she was scared to the point of trembling, afraid of losing it all. Martha looked at her watch. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was still awake, but in the morning, she got up before her husband and made breakfast, which was rare. John got up at 7 in the morning as usual and decided to go for a run. He didn't have surgery in the morning and could afford to come to the clinic later. He looked for the Walkman that Alice had once given him, but couldn't find it. "Tanya, have you seen my Walkman? I want to go for a run." "I threw it away. It was old. I bought you a new one, the latest brand. Here it is," and she handed him her present. He slammed his fist on the table, struggling to hold back the urge to throw something at her. "Why are you throwing away my stuff? Who asked you to?" "What did I do? I threw out old junk. I bought you a nice new Walkman." "I want my old one, but take this one back." He didn't feel like running, so he packed up and left for work. It's a good thing he was alone in the car, because what he was saying wasn't meant for anyone's ears. But he let off some steam and arrived at work calm and ready to meet his patients. After work, he went to visit his parents. Finally, the mother said excitedly, "I miss you, son. You've forgotten all about your mom. Sit down, I'll feed you." I'd love to eat your specialties. Want some soup? Sure, I'll have everything. Bring it over. How are things with your family? How's the wife? Mom, I want a divorce. Oh yeah, you made a fortune, and you said you choose for life, remember? No, I don't, but I believe my mom, he said, smiling. I hope you're kidding, or are you serious? Oh, Mom, I don't feel like going home. I don't like your Martha very much, but you got married. And not wanting to go home isn't gonna solve your problems, John. You have a family, and if there's a problem, it shouldn't be solved by divorce. It should be solved by sitting down across from each other and talking. If your dad and I didn't do that, maybe you wouldn't even be alive. Come on, eat up and go home. You're a man, and you're supposed to solve problems, not hide from them. You didn't know her at all, and you were right about her. You don't even have to know her, you just look at her and it's obvious. He said goodbye of his parents and went home. Anna was in the first grade and pleased her mother with her success. At the parents' meeting, the teachers praised her for her activity, her desire to help others, for her easygoing character. Alice was pleased when the teacher Juliana talked about her daughter reading better than anyone else in the class, fluently, like an adult. John was proud of his daughter too, if he knew he was a dad. She was drinking tea. Half an hour lunch break was coming to an end, when she was torn from these pleasant thoughts by a call from home. Her father was calling. Daughter, Mom's gone. No, I talked to her 2 hours ago. What happened? Alice screamed. I went to the store to get bread, heard her talking to you, came back about 30 minutes later. I looked in the room and Megan was asleep, so I didn't bother her. An hour, 2 hours later, I went to see her, and she wasn't with me, and he cried like a baby. Come, my daughter, I can't do it alone, and he hung up the phone. She left her daughter with Victoria and went to her father's house. Megan had a massive heart attack. She felt sick as soon as she hung up the phone after talking to her daughter. Her eyes went black. She managed to pick up the phone, but could not dial the cherished number 991. When Harry came in from the store, she was already dead. A good death, said the women at the funeral, did not suffer herself and did not torment anyone. For relatives, of course, it is a strong blow, they said, looking at Harry, aged 10 years and bent, as if from a strong blow under the breath, from which it was difficult to breathe. Alice also looked no better, but held on. They remembered what a hostess she was, how delicious she cooked, and of course about her tough character, which would be more suitable for a man. Alice lay in her room and thought about how to live on. She couldn't leave her father alone, so she had to move in with him. She would take Victoria with her. She'll help her around the house and her father won't be so lonely. Daddy, I'm going away for a while. I'll quit my job, and we'll all come to your place. You won't mind Aunt Coralie moving in here? No, I'd love it. That's good, be patient. I'll be back soon. And hugging each other, they parted. There was a dense silence in the house. Only now he realized he was alone. His wrinkled face was frozen in an expression of longing, and the tears rolled down by themselves. How hard it was to be left alone in his old age, without a loved one, with whom he had lived. It was terrible to say how many years. Sure, he would have his daughter, his granddaughter, his sister with him, but it was all wrong. He wouldn't have his Megan with him anymore. Victoria had gotten so used to Anna and Alice over the years that when the latter said she was moving in with her father, she was sad. But when she heard that she was going with them, she was very happy. Alisaka, my apartment is privatized. I bequeathed it to you. Do with it whatever you see fit. If you're short of money, you can rent it to tenants or sell it, or maybe you want to keep it for Anna. You're the only one I've got. She returned to her father a week later. It seemed to her that he hadn't gotten up all that time. Why would I get up? I'm lying in bed waiting to meet Megan. No, Daddy, you can't go there yet. Come on, get up. Go get cleaned up and we'll have lunch. Like an obedient child, he did as his daughter told him. He felt disgusting. He could stare for hours at the iconostasis he had made from his wife's photographs. Alice did not know what she could do to distract her father. He went into a deep depression, lost the taste for life, ceased to be interested in anything. He was immersed in his grief. It took 6 months for Harry's eyes to brighten, and he began to take an interest in his granddaughter, meeting her from school and helping her do her homework. After school, she would ask him to go for a walk with her. They could go to the park or to the embankment, where they had a great time. Once my grandfather suggested that she read her a bedtime story. Grandpa, I can read perfectly well myself. I know, but I want you to dream fairy tale dreams at night. So listen, Alice wasn't feeling well herself. The stress of losing her mom, the stress of a depressed dad who was literally dragged out by his hair, just like Munchausen. She had to see a doctor. Honey, your blood pressure is elevated. Are you taking anything to lower it? No, I don't feel it. That's not good. You could have a stroke. Have you had a checkup recently? I've never had one. Let's take care of your health. You're so young, but you look tired and sickly. I don't really feel well. I'm tense all the time. After my mom died, I can't recover. My dad's not feeling well. I can't get a job. And I can't sleep. Take some tests and we'll see what we can do for you. And buy these pills and take them for high blood pressure. And get into the habit of taking your blood pressure every day so you can react in time. Reluctantly, but the woman still had to go through all the specialists, take tests, and come to the doctor for a verdict. The doctor looked at her blood tests, looked at Alice, and asked for a repeat blood test. Do I have something wrong? Alice asked fearfully. Let's not worry for nothing, but we will talk after the second blood test. Alice sat in front of the doctor and waited to see what she would say about the second blood test. She didn't look well. She hadn't slept at all during the night. Yesterday again ended in nothing. She could not get a job anywhere. It was a shame to live on her father and aunt's pension. She was ready to work as a secretary in some firm and was even ready to undergo training, but so far there was no one willing to take her even for such a job. Sweetie, you need to get better first, and then get a job. Managers need healthy workers, and you have it written all over your face that you feel unwell, to put it mildly. Your blood work is bad. Your white blood cell count is elevated. What does that mean, doctor? White blood cells are our everything. It's our immune system. It's our defense against the various enemies that threaten our body. So I'm fine. I have enough white blood cells to protect me. Not exactly. You have to have a certain number of white blood cells, and if they're higher than normal, it's a bad sign. I'll write you a referral to a hematologist, and I suggest you see an oncologist. For your own good, you should show him the mammogram. We need to check everything to get the right treatment. What about the mammogram, doctor? A specialist will tell you. My advice is don't delay. She was so tired she couldn't go to the doctors. As she left the hospital, she caught the eye of a man who looked at her as if she were nothing, with absolutely no interest. She felt how pathetic and scary she must look now, but she was only thinking about getting home as quickly as possible. She didn't care about her own appearance. From the looks on her father's and aunt's faces, they pitied her, thinking that her life could have turned out very differently if she had been a little wiser. As a woman, she had buried herself long ago, and she had a feeling that the doctors would say nothing good to her. The word oncologist alone made her shudder. Victoria had tried several times to strike up a conversation with her about John, that he had a right to be involved in his daughter's upbringing and help her. You're doing it wrong. He's the father. Why don't you call him and tell him about the baby? He'd be thrilled. You've said he's never had kids in his marriage, so Anna's an only child, and you're depriving him of the joy of fatherhood. She didn't have the energy to talk, much less argue. You've lost a lot of weight lately. You don't sleep at night, you walk around like a lunatic. I can hear everything. If you're worried that you can't find a job, don't be. I have some savings. I think Stjepa has some too. We'll live. If you don't want to tell John about your daughter, you'll have to take care of her. There's no hope for me and Harry, and you're dragging your feet. Think, girl, about talking to Anna's father. After she said that, she thought for the first time, what if she were gone? What would happen to the child? The father is like a child himself. Victoria is even older than him. An orphanage? And shuddering at these thoughts, she decided to write a letter to John, but he would receive it only when she was gone. After putting Anechka to bed, she sat down to write the letter. My dear John, it's me, Alice. If you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer on this earth. Life is such a clever thing. She already knew that our romantic dinner would be our last. It was a beautiful evening and a magical night that got me pregnant. Yes, I did it all wrong as always. On my mom's advice, I didn't tell you. You have a daughter. If she dares to come to you someday, you'll recognize her at once. She looks just like you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I never got married, because everyone else was dead before they even opened their mouths. I named my daughter Anna, but not after your mother. It was the name of my aunt's daughter, the one I lived with when I ran away from you. I knew you wouldn't find me at her place because you didn't know she existed. I knew everything about you. Every day I went on social media, I found news about Surgeon John. I'm sorry, my darling. You and I have gone from being two halves to being two lonely people. But I know you got married, and I couldn't even imagine someone else to take your place. You were a beautiful moment in my life. Now it seems like a beautiful dream. But then the morning came, and things didn't go our way. Why did I decide to write you a letter after all these years? I'm sick and can't take care of my daughter. My mom is gone, my dad and aunt are also elderly, and it will be difficult for them to lift my daughter. After mom died, I went back to my parents' apartment again. When I am gone, my aunt will send you this letter. Help Anna in this life, and I will pray for you in the next world. Goodbye, John, and forgive me for everything. If I could take back that beautiful time, I'd do things differently. And when I saw you outside the clinic with Ariana, I would never have run away like I did years ago, but I would have walked over and taken you to the registry office. But what happened is what happened. Anna only knows good things about you. I keep meaning to tell her the reason we broke up, but I can't find the words to explain my stupid actions to her. Goodbye. Alice? She read the letter several times, folded it in half, and put it in an envelope with John's address written on it. She realized that he would never forgive her for this inhuman act toward him. Maybe his daughter wouldn't either when she grew up, but that would be later. And now she had no strength, she needed to rest. The next day she could not go to the hospital, but decided to rest, so that with new strength to take up treatment. Daughter, you're scaring me. Sat down on the edge of her bed, said her father. You don't eat anything, you've lost weight. You have to fight the disease for the sake of your daughter, and you have not even started treatment, and you gave up. The disease is not stupid either. It's afraid of the strong, persistent, and retreats to those who are weaker. Wake up, my daughter. We need to eat to have strength. She got up and could only eat chicken broth. She couldn't eat anymore. She herself felt that all her clothes were hanging out. Indeed, the doctor was right. Who needs sick employees? She looked at herself in the mirror and was horrified. She ran her palms over her face, her hair. She didn't know this girl, but her eyes were still as big and beautiful. They were so sad, they reflected the loneliness she had been living with lately. She avoided looking into the eyes of her father, her aunt, and especially her girl, who was not guilty of anything, but was somehow involved in her game. They, on the contrary, looked at her and waited for her to finally get up and start living, instead of waiting for her to be taken to the cemetery. They saw Alice dying before their eyes. But to everyone's surprise, the next morning she got up, made breakfast, and everyone cheered up when they saw the same Alice. A little worried, she walked into the doctor's office. After looking at her tests, the doctor asked, "What are you complaining about?" "I have constant weakness, no appetite, trouble sleeping, and I have lost a lot of weight. These are just the first signs that the white blood cells are elevated. But provoke this condition can also oncology, endocrine pathologies. How long have you had this condition?" "Yes, as my mom died, I had a terrible stress. I talked to her on the phone, and 2 hours later my dad called that my mom died. It was just shock. It's been over 6 months. You're taking too long to see a doctor. Let me put it this way. I can just prescribe you antibiotics, but we need to figure out what the underlying pathology is. You know, you need to see an oncologist, and if he says you're not his patient, we'll start treatment. Don't delay, the sooner the better." She understood everything, but she was afraid. The oncologist said she had a stage 2 tumor in her left breast. She had to have surgery. He wrote a referral to the oncology clinic and repeated the same words as the previous doctors, so that she did not stall for time. She was put on the waiting list because there were so many patients like her. Only after 3 months, she was able to get on the operating table. Before the operation, the doctor told her that she would have to remove the entire breast because the tumor is a decent size and there is a risk of its spread to nearby lymph nodes and organs. When he saw tears in the patient's eyes, he tried to calm her down. "You understand, these are only recommendations and they do not oblige you to anything. The final decision will be made only by you. But I want to tell you that now you are scared and guided only by emotional and mental reasons. You have time until tomorrow. Think it over and we'll make a decision in the morning." She called her aunt at home, who advised her to listen to the doctor, or she would have to go to him again next year. In the morning, she agreed to the operation. She took it very hard. Her blood pressure was off the charts. Every day her aunt went to her house, bringing her broths, pancakes, fruit. She knew how much it cost. Aunt Coraline, I'm so ashamed. You buy me pickles on your pension. Don't give me fruit. The food here is good. Don't bring me anything. Give it to Anna. Don't worry. Anna gets the best. 2 weeks later, she came home. The father, meeting his daughter with the words alive, cried like a child. She was happy to see her daughter, and hope was instilled in her that she would still live. 2 months later, she had a repeat blood test and her white blood cells had decreased, but not by much. The hematologist prescribed complex treatment, adding that she should eat well, rest more, try not to be nervous. Doctor, is that any way to live? Rest, do nothing, and don't get nervous. That's how only fairy tales live. So live in a fairy tale for the duration of your treatment. It will do you good and will not harm your health, but on the contrary, it will help you. Victoria was desperately short of money and decided to sell her apartment. Realizing that she would still need money for treatment and there was nowhere to get it, she advertised the sale. 6 months later, the apartment was bought and she could fully feed Alice and buy her medicine. After some time, Alice received disability group 2 and began to receive a pension, a small one, but it gave her the opportunity not to feel dependent. The disease receded for a while. Alice felt better, but for some reason she did not get better, although they ate well. Of course, her appetite was not brutal, but she ate a little bit of everything. 2 years passed. Anna moved to the 4th grade and still pleased everyone with her school achievements. Victoria was worried about Alice. She didn't look well. You should go to the doctor again. Your complexion is a bit earthy. I don't like you. Go, daughter, get yourself checked out. Get another mammogram. It's been 2 years. Dusenka, I'm so sick of these doctors. I don't want to see anyone. I'm tired of them. 2 years, day in and day out in these hospitals. I understand, but give me your word that for Anna's sake you'll go and get checked out. You know, you're my weak spot. Okay, I'll go, but not tomorrow, but I promise. She went 3 months later when she didn't feel well. Mammogram showed metastatic second breast cancer. When she realized that was it, she told her aunt about the letter and asked her to take it to John when she was gone. But the aunt had her own way and dropped it in his mailbox the next day. There had been no change in John's life for 2 years. Martha still couldn't get pregnant, but changed a lot during that time. She decided to go to work and not lead an idle lifestyle, which John was starting to get sick of looking at her. Martha went to work and home in the evening and had time to rotate around the house. Getting started, after 6 years of doing nothing, wasn't easy. But as her wise former roommate in the rental apartment had said, if you want to keep such a husband, turn on your brains if you haven't left them all in the beauty parlors. She chopped the truth, but after her words, everything became clear and understandable as 2 times 2. Do you think you and John have a normal family? You go all day on salon saunas when he at this time is not easy to earn money, standing for 6 hours at the operating table, and you squander this money and complain that he does not go anywhere with you. You have a consumer attitude to your husband. No feelings here are out of the question and cannot be. Leave him and start a new life. Oh, come on, Shanna. I can't. I love him. It's not him you love. It's his money. At least admit it to yourself. Have you ever had a heart-to-heart talk with your husband? Asked how he was doing at work? Have you ever wanted to sit next to him in front of the TV? Put your hand on his shoulder and talk about anything? No, he gets tired. He has dinner and goes to sleep. I understand him and I believe he's tired. I just don't understand why he needs you. A man like that can find a healthy woman if he wants to. You can't even give him a baby. What does he need you for? Are you ready to change your stilettos for more comfortable maternity shoes? Yeah, I've been treated. I've done everything the doctor told me to do, but it's not working. So go to work. Show him that you love him, not for his money, but for himself, so that he feels a home, a family, not these endless trips to salons and boutiques. After that conversation, Martha went back to her old job as an instructor, and John took on a surgeon at the clinic. Now he had less workload and could take care of the clinic's business, which required constant attention. That day he had to fight with the workers who could not deliver another operating room on time. I do not come to you. You are always smoking. When will it end? I'll give you this month's salary only when I see the operating room ready. That's it. This is my last conversation with you. If you don't, I'll kick you out and hire someone else. Slamming the door, he decided to go home early. Martha saw her husband get out of the car and head into the driveway. Dinner was ready. She opened the door in a nice apron, all dressed up, put on a smile, and waited for the elevator door to slam. And John, walking into the entryway, opened the mailbox and saw a letter with a painfully familiar address on it. He leaned against the wall and immediately opened the envelope. It was Alice's handwriting, his Alice. He read the last lines as he came down the stairs. He was already running to the car. His hands on the steering wheel were shaking. He could not cope with the excitement. Alice, no, how can it be? Why didn't she come to me? So stayed with her stupid pride. Only now he realized why she had run away. God, what could she have seen outside the clinic? Silly girl. His heart was pounding and ready to jump out. He drove up to her house. Luckily, the entrance was open. Someone had brought furniture, ran like a boy to the 6th floor, and rang the bell. Anna opened the door. Daddy? In front of him stood a girl exactly like him with Alice's eyes. She was a beauty. Daughter, my darling. The girl was a little frightened by these stormy feelings, although she knew that it was her father, the best man in the world, as her mother said. At that time, Victoria came up. Hello, John. It's good you came at once. You can still see her. So she's alive. She's not dead yet. I didn't listen to her and sent the letter to you as soon as she told me about it. Come in. Thank you very much. He went into the room and saw his fugitive. Her eyes were widened, but he could catch a smile on her sickly, tired face. They looked at each other and both were crying. He crouched on the edge of her bed and took the small, transparent, veined hand in his warm hand. I'm happy for them, Harry said to his sister, and you're so good for not listening to your daughter. Joan smiled affectionately at her and imagined the time when they had dreamed of getting married and having children. She deserved so much more than what she had condemned herself to. Today was a gift to her, a gift she dreamed of since she'd run away from John. He had long ago become a pipe dream for her, like those dreams of movie actors whose photographs she had been fascinated by in her distant youth. He was just as distant and unattainable, even though they had once loved each other. Alice, why did you do all this? Why did you do it? Then he realized it wasn't the time, asked his aunt for a blanket and scooped Alice up, saying he was taking her to his clinic. Victoria had time to put on his arm a bag with documents and the results of the examination of his niece. Having determined her in a separate room and created all conditions for her to rest, he said to bring another bed to the room. He would be with her, try to make up for the lost 12 years. The next day, he called to his clinic for a consultation with an oncologist, a professor. After examining Alice and familiarizing himself with the tests, he said it was too late, but it is possible to prolong life for 6 months. He gave a list of medicines, warning that they are very expensive, which can improve her condition for a while, described how best to take them. He said that some drugs were still in development. They were promised a great future and could be tried if they could be arranged and bought. John got everything. He made sure that her relatives and daughter were allowed to see her. She did get better. She was even able to go outside for a while to breathe the air. John, in love like a boy the day they met, proposed to her. Do you remember what today is not? John asked the girl. No, quietly replied she. This is the day you and I met. Do you remember? It was raining hard and I gave you a ride home in my car. I can hear your teeth chattering from the cold even now. She nodded and smiled. Alice, darling, marry me. He took out a red box and only after she said yes, did he put a ring on her finger, almost a child's hand. They stood in the park on the hospital grounds and embraced. John, I'm tired and I want to lie down. He had extended her life for a year. During that time they had time to talk, to apologize to each other, to remember the beautiful moments of their lives, and finally to sign their marriage. During that year he had become friends with his daughter, who had become the closest person in the world to him. On the day Alice was gone, there was no sign of trouble. John had one surgery in the morning, after which he came to see Alice. He took her hand and talked at length about how he had been to France and she would definitely go there when Alice was better. She smiled, nodding back at him. She had never felt so good before. He talked and talked, and she closed her eyes and quietly left the world behind. John did not immediately notice that his Alice was no longer with him, but when he looked at her, he cried. He was grateful to fate that for a whole year, he was next to the one he had loved all his life. Harry could not bear the loss of his daughter and left almost after her. Anna and grandmother Coraline had always been very close people, and after the loss of their relatives, became even closer. The child felt the warm attitude of the woman and answered her in the same way. They lived together. John helped in any way he could. In the summer, he tried to send them on vacation to the sea. That day, when Martha did not wait for him for dinner, she called him several times, but he obviously didn't care for her. He came home in the morning and was happy to tell her that he had a daughter. She's 12 years old, and her name is Anna. A daughter? You have a daughter? Where did she come from? Is she just another gold digger? I'd have to check if she's a daughter or an imposter. I'd ask you to keep your mouth shut about the money, lady. I know for a fact that I'm not being tricked. It's my baby. What if I have your baby? Or don't you want our child together anymore? I didn't say that. I'd love to have more kids, but we haven't worked out in years. It's payback for your youthful exuberance. Are you reproaching me? You never loved me. I don't know why you married me. You could have done just fine without a wife. I don't know why now. I don't want your daughter in my house. It's an eternal reminder of your turbulent youth. It's either me or your new daughter. Well, first of all, it's not your house, at least it's ours. And secondly, I choose my daughter, my own daughter. So we're splitting the property. What property? The apartment was bought before the wedding. I own it, and you forgot that you haven't worked for 6 years. What here could possibly be yours? I worked at home. Doing your laundry, ironing, washing dishes, cleaning the apartment, that's work too. All right, take whatever you want out of the apartment, that's fine with me. I'll see what I can get an apartment and file for divorce. But I want you to know that I really care about you. I'm sure you do. You blame me for living off you, but you asked me not to work. Tanya, let's not fight. We can still be friends. Will you give me money to pay the rent for a few months until I get a salary at work? Don't worry, of course I'll help. She lay alone in the bedroom again, thinking about how she would live now, and regretted that the fairy tale had ended so quickly. She caught herself thinking not about how she would live without him, but how hard it would be for her without his money. John had divorced Martha, and one day when he came home from work, he saw that half the furniture had been taken out of the apartment. The curtains had been taken down, all the appliances were gone, the TV, the electric fireplace, the bed from the bedroom, probably more, but John didn't care. She couldn't take away what was most important to him, his daughter. Anna was his joy and his pride. After the 6th grade, he transferred her to a school with an English bias, and in addition, she studied French and Chinese. She wanted to become a doctor like her dad. When Victoria passed away, she went to live with her father, and in that apartment, John started renovations. His daughter was going to have the best of everything. Grandma Anna and Grandpa Victor loved Anna. They said she was a Bogdanov breed and were very proud of it. For the first time in her life, the mother had to admit that she was wrong, that she ignored her son's love for Alice and imposed Ariana on him. I must confess, the girl is very well brought up, smart. Well done, your Alice. I admit I was wrong. Her daughter finished school with a silver medal and entered medical school. Already from the first year, she attended her father's operations, gaining experience. Anna adored watching him, his magic hands when he stood at the operating table. He was so handsome, she understood her mom when she was young. When her daughter brought a young man to visit one day, John thought he was going to lose his mind. Daughter, I hate all your boyfriends. I would kill them. Anna's eyebrows crept up. Seeing this, her father immediately began to justify himself. But I'll work on it. Jealousy and possessiveness were tearing him apart. I never thought that I would be so jealous of my daughter to these. He did not want to say bum, but other more decent words he did not find. He shared with his parents. Son, I'll tell you a secret. I understand you perfectly well. Jealous not only fathers of their daughters, but also moms of their sons. Oh, how jealous, especially of these, and they laughed, understanding each other. You have to trust your daughter. She's a very sensible girl. And you don't want her to remain an old maid, do you? Do you know what it's like to be a grandparent? It's even nicer than being a mom or dad. Believe me, children are different, bad or good, but grandchildren are always amazing. Remember that, son.